Chapter 12:37. The figure of an old man appeared from within the river of blood that had split apart. He wore a snow-white robe, and he had a refined and thin appearance. But as his eyelids opened and closed, a wisp of a horrifying bloody glow would frequently flash within them, and it was a horrifying sight. It was Taoist Blood River, a giant of the devil path in the ancient times who had been killed by the king of the underworld and refined into an evil soul. Yin Namlai had already seen him in the netherworld sea and knew that the elder in front of him had become an evil soul. He had lost the billions of sons of blood gods that had dominated the world in the past, but his divine arts and magic power were still astonishing. Putting aside the fact that he had to use all his strength to activate the ritual of the curse of blood-soul tranquility, even if he focused on fighting, he wouldn't be able to defeat Taoist Blood River, even if he was injured by Green Crest and Yudu. Taoist Blood River looked at Yin Namlai coldly. Rivers of blood flowed around him and spread continuously, gradually turning into a boundless sea of blood that shrouded the entire void. The filthy blood river was incomparably stinky, making people want to vomit. It hadn't been obvious in the netherworld sea, but now that they were in the boundless world, the sea of blood that covered the sky caused the spirit chi in the surroundings to be polluted. All the light in the world seemed to have dimmed at this moment. Only the dim blood-red light flickered incessantly, covering the void. However, Yin Namlai's expression was calm. He said indifferently, "Thank you, Tao friend of the ancient race." As he spoke, the void trembled. Suddenly, many snow-white lotuses broke through the void. A desolate, ancient, endless, and seemingly endless intent domain accompanied the snow-white lotuses from within. A middle-aged man appeared in the snow lotuses. He was handsome and elegant. He was the master of the ancient world of immortals, the current leader of the ancient emperor's bloodline. Gu Jun looked at the sea of blood that covered the sky and sighed. "Taoist Blood River, you live up to your reputation." He clapped his hands lightly, and a white light flew up into the sky, turning into a simple and elegant white lotus in the sky. It looked only the size of an adult's palm, but it exuded a power that could shock people's hearts. The rich spiritual energy fluctuations were vast and boundless, and it was abnormally mysterious, as if it was facing an entire world. It was the inheritance of the ancient emperor's bloodline, the treasure that was only one step away from achieving creation, the longevity lotus seat. After learning that Yudu race had returned to the boundless world, the human race was in a dangerous situation, and the bloodline of the ancient emperors finally threw themselves into the war between the two worlds. As the strongest expert of the ancient emperor's bloodline, not only did Gu Jun participate in the war, he even brought the longevity lotus throne out of the ancient longevity world to participate in the war between the two worlds. Originally, after communicating with Lin Feng, Gu Jun rushed to West Hill City and arrived almost at the same time as Shi Tianhao. However, after witnessing Shi Tianhao activating the power of Sky Castle, Gu Jun stopped attacking and only silently helped Shi Tianhao in the distance. Even though it was a rescue in a time of crisis, his identity caused the Great Qin Empire to have unnecessary suspicions. Seeing that Shi Tianhao was controlling the power of Sky Castle more and more freely, Gu Jun decided not to show himself and let the Great Qin Empire only owe Xianmen Tianzong a favor. When the Haotian mirror was shaken again and Yin Namlai broke out of the encirclement, Gu Jun, who had communicated with Lin Feng again, didn't go to stop Yudu. Instead, he followed Yin Namlai to find the king of the underworld. Not only was the king of the underworld carrying out the ritual, his whereabouts were also a secret. He definitely had people protecting him and many other preparations. The evil soul refined by the king of the underworld has a huge disadvantage. It can't travel far away from its master. The further away it is from the controller of the life and death Nether Dao fruit, the more severe the decline of the evil soul's power. Gu Jun said calmly, "Even though the longevity lotus seed of my race hasn't truly reached creation, and I haven't completed the first calamity, the evil soul of Taoist Blood River is quite far away from the king of the underworld, causing his power to be much weaker than when he was at his peak. I should be able to stop him. After being refined into an evil soul, he can no longer execute the Dharma-ending calamity. In the past, the ancient emperor race had directly clashed with the orthodoxy of the king of the underworld, so they had a very deep understanding of the paths and skills of the king of the underworld. As Gu Jun spoke, he executed the power of the longevity lotus seat. White lotuses of light bloomed in the void and formed a boundless sea of white light, blocking the vast sea of blood outside. Ninth Imperial Uncle and the South Pole Treasure Gourd have also arrived. However, they're facing Taoist Blood River, so they can't avoid being tainted by the Nether Blood River. Therefore, they can only stay outside. Silently, Gu Jun said, "Yin Guan Master, please point out the exact location of the king of the underworld and the people of the underworld hall." This time, the ancient race had almost turned out in full force. Other than Gu Jun and the longevity lotus seat, Gu Yuankai and one of the two great Mahayana grade magic treasures of the ancient race, the South Pole Treasure Gourd, had also accompanied them. The ancient longevity world was only left with the other Tao integration realm cultivator, Gu Chung, and the Mahayana grade magic treasure, the desolate ancient immortal cauldron. The king of the underworld is currently executing the ritual, so he can't be distracted. We could try to launch a surprise attack to disturb him. Other than our own race, Xianmin Tianzong seems to have also rushed over. Hearing this, Yin Namlai glanced at Gu Jun. At this moment, the king of the underworld and Yin Xinghe's evil soul were both executing the ritual, so they couldn't be distracted. Daoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death were being held back by Emperor Zhou's Liang Pan and the Grand Imperial Palace, while Daoist Blood River was being held back by Gu Jun and the Longevity Lotus Seat. The ancient race's Tao integration realm elder, Gu Yuankai, with his Mahayana grade magic treasure, could naturally play an important role against the cultivators of the Underworld Hall. However, there was a problem. If they really destroyed the ritual, the king of the underworld would fly into a rage out of humiliation, and Gu Yuankai and the others wouldn't be able to stop him. However, Gu Jun and Gu Yuankai, who already had a rough idea of the outcome of the matter, also knew that the Haotian mirror was of great importance. Even if the king of the underworld didn't obtain it, if the Haotian mirror was shaken, causing the Taishu temple and the mirror to fall into the Xian Sea together, it would still lead to a catastrophic outcome. For the entire war between the two worlds, the situation of the human race would be unimaginable. Since they had already decided to participate in the war between the two worlds, the ancient race would no longer hold back. Slowly, Yin Namlai said, "This plan is feasible." After saying this, he didn't waste any more time. With a flick of his finger, a ray of light tore through the void and fled into the distance. Gu Jun said, "Ninth Imperial Uncle, be careful." A few rays of light flashed across the distant horizon. They followed Yin Namlai's directions and headed into the depths of the void. Among the rays of light, one of them was a white-haired elder with a calm expression. He was the longtime elder of the ancient emperor's bloodline, Venerable Spirit Perception Gu Yuankai. Gu Yuankai transmitted his voice using magic power. This old man will do his best. Beside Gu Yuankai, in a ray of resplendent light, there was a broadsword that was overflowing with an ancient aura. Its entire body was flashing with a faint golden radiance. The majestic sword Will and sword Qi rushed into the heavens, startling all the worlds in the world. It was Tsangtian Dao Jian who wanted to slash blue sky up and yellow spring down. Wang Lin had yet to recover from his heavy injuries, and Xiao Yin had to use sword Venerable Firmament to train himself by using radical battle tactics, so his injuries weren't light either. Zhu Yi guarded the realm passage of the southern borders and confronted Shenlong King, while Shi Tianhao blocked Yudu, who was chasing Yin Namlai. Thus, on Xianmin Tianzong's side, Tsangtian Dao Jian would bring Yang Qing back to Mount Kunlun through the space formation from Yingxi. After that, they would rush over from Mount Kunlun with Li Yuanfang. However, they were the vanguard. After Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage dealt with Ming Yudu and the rest of the demon race, they would also rush over to King of the Underworld's battlefield. Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang were swept up by Song Tiandao, Jian sword light. Silently, they sat upright in the sword light, and neither of them spoke. Even though their mission was to clean up the strong practitioners of the Underworld Hall with the other primordial spirit realm practitioners of the ancient emperor's bloodline other than Gu Yuankai, they might face the threat of the king of the Underworld if they got close to him. However, their expressions were calm, as usual. They didn't feel any fear towards the upcoming battle. Li Yuanfang turned his head to look at Yang Qing. Fifth senior brother. No one knew what Yang Qing had experienced when he had fallen into the tranquil dream illusory realm that Ning Wanga had unintentionally created. However, Wang Lin, who had a similar experience, knew that it definitely wouldn't be a beautiful memory. Li Yuanfang, who had found out about the general situation from Wang Lin, couldn't help feeling slightly worried for this senior brother of his. Even though he was strict and stubborn and wasn't good at expressing himself, deep in his heart, he still cared about his senior brother and junior brother. Li Yuanfang didn't really understand the relationship between a man and a woman, but he also felt that it was a pity for his fifth senior brother and his former lover, Fang Ting. As if he understood what Li Yuanfang was thinking, Yang Qing smiled before he could speak. Sixth junior brother, don't worry. I'm fine. Li Yuanfang nodded silently. Yang Qing continued. Sixth junior brother, you've accumulated enough, but you're still a step away from the primordial spirit realm. If you gain something from this battle, you might be able to successfully break through the final bottleneck. Li Yuanfang didn't answer and only nodded slightly. To him, this kind of uncertain matter made him very uncomfortable. Yang Qing also understood Li Yuanfang's mentality. After encouraging him, she also didn't say anything else. On the other side, Gu Yuankai and Song Tiandao Jian walked side by side, following the guidance of Yin Nanlai's spiritual light and flying through the void. A gourd-shaped silhouette was vaguely visible in the void above his head. It was the ancient emperor's other Mayana grade treasure, the South Pole treasure gourd, apart from the primordial immortal cauldron. In the gourd, there were a few ancient race cultivators led by Gu Peng, who was at the return to Void Realm. Other than them, there were also Gu Bai Xian and the others. They were in the South Pole treasure gourd, moving together with Gu Yuankai. At this time, they were also silent, meditating with calm expressions. As they walked, a light suddenly flashed in front of them, and a gray fog appeared. It lit up with a dim light, stretching across the dark void. The fog was so vast that they couldn't see its end, like a gray sea of clouds. Song Tiandao Jian and Gu Yuankai's movements paused at the same time. The spiritual qi waves within it are so strange. It feels like a medium-class world has been destroyed, but in the process of destruction, it suddenly stopped. This is the effect of the king of the underworld's magical power. He sacrificed a medium-class world. However, the power within the gray sea of clouds was currently being supplied to the king of the underworld's ritual, and the king of the underworld himself couldn't be distracted. After a short pause, the group continued to rush into the gray sea of clouds. At this time, the gray sea of clouds suddenly began to fluctuate violently, and streaks of light flashed within. Chapter 1238. As the gray sea of clouds churned, the fog gradually parted to reveal a group of people. This group of people were all dressed in black robes, and their leader was a tall man. His face was hidden by the hood of his cloak, but the terrifying dermic power fluctuations around him showed that he was a Dao integration stage powerhouse. He was the Underworld Palace's sub-palace master, King Yama, who had the highest cultivation among the 10 Yama kings, and was a loyal confidant of the king of the Underworld. There were two people standing on either side of him. The one on the left was a young man dressed in a black robe with golden edges. He held a huge black brush in his hand, which was the manifestation of the Grand Mahayana Grade Magic Treasure, the Netherworld Imperial Brush. On the right of King Yama stood an old man dressed in a black robe, but he had taken off his cloak and revealed his face. This old man's hair and beard were red, and he looked mighty. Although it was the first time that Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and the others saw him in person, they immediately recognized him. He was the current sect master of the reincarnation sect, the former sect master of the Azura Path, Mo Shila. In the past, other than the former sect masters of the Heaven Path and Zhang and Rui of the Human Path, there was another Tao integration stage expert in the reincarnation sect. His divine powers and dermic powers were far stronger than Zhang and Rui's. Even Shi Tianfang did not dare to underestimate him. It was precisely because of Zhang and Rui's betrayal that Mo Shilua fell into Shi Tianfang's trap. He was eventually defeated and captured, and the reincarnation sect was unified. Shi Tianfang did not know that the king of the underworld and the former palace master of the underworld palace, Su Anda, were able to unite the reincarnation sect. Su Anda had also fallen into the king of the underworld trap. Both Mo Shilua and Zhang and Rui had secretly pledged their allegiance to the king of the underworld. Lin Feng and Xianmin Tianzong, as well as the people in Taishu Temple, were all vaguely aware of this, but they did not act rashly. Instead, they hoped to use this opportunity to locate the king of the underworld. After losing the six-path wheel, Shi Tianfang, and Zhang and Rui, the reincarnation sect power was greatly weakened. The reincarnation sect had been in a dormant state for years. Mo Shuluo, who was born in the Shura Dao and loved to kill, seemed to have put down the butcher's knife and become a vegetarian after he took over the position of the reincarnation sect's sect master. Even during the war between the two realms, both Lin Feng and Taishu Temple were secretly monitoring the movements of the reincarnation sect. However, as the Yudu race returned to the boundless world, the war situation took a turn for the worse. The entire divine land was under immense pressure, so it was inevitable that the surveillance on reincarnation sect would weaken. As the new King Tai Shan of the Underworld Hall, Mo Shuluo, and the new sect master of the celestial path of the reincarnation sect, Shun Qifeng, naturally had their own methods of concealment. They snuck out of the mountain gate of reincarnation sect to meet up with the king of the underworld. Only the two of them came, and no one else in the reincarnation sect was alerted. Under their concealment, no one noticed them. To the king of the underworld, seizing the Haotian mirror was undoubtedly the most important task at hand. Even he began to mobilize all the forces he could muster. If this battle was successful, the entire divine land, and even the great heaven primordial world's power map would be rewritten. Behind Mo Shuluo stood a young man in a black robe. Under the black robe was a white shirt. He took off his cloak and hood, revealing his true appearance. It was Shun Qifeng. Beside Shun Qifeng stood a black-robed old man with a lean face. His cultivation base was at the return to Void Realm. He was the trusted subordinate of the king of the underworld, just like the King Yanluo. He was also one of the 10 Yama kings of the underworld palace, the disobedient king, Sikongyu. Standing with them were a few figures shrouded in black robes. They were all subordinates of the king of the underworld, cultivators of the underworld hall, who were ranked as the 10 Yama kings of the underworld. Other than the Chakra King, King Bianxing, and King Pingdeng, there was also another King Qingguang who had succeeded the deceased Zhonglai. On the eve of the war between the two worlds, many forces in the Divine Land had joined forces to encircle and annihilate the Underworld Hall. The former King Chujiang and the former King Dushir had been captured. Now, outstanding emissaries from the Underworld Hall who had reached the nascent Soul Realm had been selected to fill their positions. At present, the 10 Yama Kings of the Underworld, together with the Mahayana Grade Magic Treasure, the King of the Underworld Brush, stood silently in front of Gu Yuankai, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and the others, waiting for them. In the distant void behind them, there seemed to be no sense of distance. It seemed to be close at hand, but also seemed to be out of reach. A huge 3-layered black altar stood there. On top of the altar, rays of light flashed, mysterious and vast. It was as if the universe covered the heavens, and the aura of magic power emanated from it. Gu Yuankai looked at the King Yanluo and the others in front of him and did not waste any time. He looked up at the light shadow in the void above his head. Thank you, Old Man South Pole. The light shadow flew out of the void, revealing the shape of a purple gold gourd. It was as big as a mountain. A ruddy old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion appeared beside the purple gold gourd. He nodded and said, "Do it." Light flew out of the gourd, releasing Gu Peng and the others. Then, the old man disappeared and became one with the huge South Pole treasure gourd. Gu Yuankai pointed a finger at the South Pole treasure gourd, and one man and one treasure rushed toward the black altar. The king Yinluo, who was shrouded in a black robe, did not say a word. He stepped forward. The king of the underworld brush beside him, and a young man formed by the magic treasure's origin spirit also disappeared and became one with the magic treasure. The king Yinluo reached out a hand and grabbed the king of the underworld brush. He immediately rushed toward Gu Yuankai and the South Pole treasure gourd. The king Yinluo waved the brush and wrote thousands of strokes in the void. Immediately, thousands of black streams of light crisscrossed and blocked the path of Gu Yuankai and the others. Gu Yuankai's expression did not change. He lightly patted the South Pole treasure gourd. The mouth of the South Pole treasure gourd opened, and instantly, like a bottomless pit, a powerful suction force came from it, sucking in the streams of black light. However, as the king Yinluo waved the king of the underworld brush, the streams of black light seemed endless, turning into a black ocean that still blocked the path of Gu Yuankai and the others. The two powerhouses of the Tao integration stage and the two Mahayana grade magic treasures immediately engaged in a battle in the void. The king Yinluo's body was covered in a black robe. Under the black robe, his body seemed to transform into layers of gray clouds, spreading out vast and mighty. He exuded a deathly aura that could cause all things to wither. A desolate and ancient aura filled the air around Gu Yuankai. It was a long and endless life, one that could even surpass life and death. White lotuses bloomed one after another, blocking the gray aura of death. At the same time, golden flames lit up, flickering with red and blue light, and began to burn the gray aura of death. Although the Nanmingli fire, one of the 7 great true fires in the world, was not known for its mighty fire, when it was used by Gu Yuankai, a powerhouse of the Tao integration stage, it had the power to burn the heavens and destroy the earth. The vast sea of fire was boundless. The Tsangtian Dao Jian also unleashed sword light and let go of Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang. He turned into a surging sword light and swept all the 10 kings of hell aside from the king Yinluo into it. Mo Shilao's eyes lit up with a dazzling crimson light. He straightened his palm as a saber and slashed at the Tsangtian Dao Jian. The saber power was terrifying, and it emitted threads that looked like black gas. It was the embodiment of the killing intent, and the deathly aura condensed to the extreme. The deathly aura of annihilation would destroy everything in its path, and all things would wither and die. The black thread-like deathly aura spread out in the void, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Although there was still a lot of light shining through, the world suddenly darkened and fell into a deathly silence. It was as if all living beings would die. However, the Tsangtian Dao Jian's mighty sword light continued to slash apart these terrifying black threads. The bright sword light caused the void to regain its luster. The Tsangtian Dao Jian, who had attained the Tao since ancient times, had never suffered any great tribulations. He had already reached the peak of the Mahayana stage. Even a Tao integration stage powerhouse like Mo Shilao, who was good at killing, was inferior to him. While the powerful sword light suppressed Mo Shilao, it also swept through the void and swept Sikongyu, Shun Qifeng, and the others into it. King Yama, who was fighting with Gu Yuankai, glanced at the Tsangtian Dao Jian. As expected of a magic treasure that had attained the Tao in ancient times. Although the king of the underworld brush is also at the peak of the Mahayana stage, is still inferior in terms of killing power in a one-on-one battle. However, I can't allow you to ruin His Majesty's grand plan. As King Yama spoke, his black robe spread out, and an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from within the thick black mist. Within the black mist, a few crimson specks of light lit up. Being stared at by those crimson specks of light was like being stared at by a few primordial beasts. Gu Yuan Kai and the Tsangtian Dao Jian were both surprised. This feeling, those crimson specks of light, became clearer and clearer within the black mist. Then, a few huge figures rushed out of the black mist. They really were a few giant beasts. Among these giant beasts, there was a heavenly demon ape, a refinement black dragon, a Kuan Peng, and even a Zhen Ho. Although they were of different races, these great beasts all exuded the same aura at this moment. They were violent and bloodthirsty, but their expressions were extremely stiff, like walking corpses. No matter what color their bodies were originally, they were all jet black now. There was a faint crimson glow circulating around them, and their blazing blood chi spread out, causing one's heart to palpitate. Gu Yuan Kai, the South Pole treasure gourd, and the Tsangtian Dao Jian were slightly surprised. This feeling is a bit like the god-slaying puppets refined by the ancient devil Dao sect's puppet Dao, but they were refined from the demon race. The puppet Dao sect was an ancient devil Dao sect. They were arrogant and vicious for a period of time. They used the bodies of other cultivators to refine puppets. Because they angered the public, they were attacked by the public. Soon, they were annihilated in the long river of history. However, they also left a strong mark in the history of the human cultivation world. Gu Yuan Kai and the others naturally knew about this. During the Middle Era, there was a devil Dao sect in the vast thousand world of the Divine Land called the Wanshou sect. They improved the puppet Dao's orthodoxy and changed to using the bodies of the demon race to refine puppets. Could it be these things? Although the ancient emperor's bloodline hid in the ancient longevity world and was relatively isolated from the outside world, they were not completely cut off from the outside world. The ancient emperor's bloodline also knew about some of the more widespread and influential matters. They had heard of the name of the Wanshou sect before. Naturally, they also knew that this devil Dao sect was most famous for refining puppets using the bodies of the demon race. The puppets created by the Dao of Puppet were made from human nascent divinity cultivators. They were called the god-slaying puppets, while the puppets created by the Myriad Beast sect were made from the bodies of great demons with indestructible demon souls. They were called the beast god puppets. Because the puppets only had the power to kill, the demon race cultivators who collected the corpses of the demon race were also demons with relatively strong physical strength. After the Wanshou sect was destroyed in the Middle Era, almost all the members of the sect died. Most of the beast god puppets in the sect were also destroyed. But now, what appeared in front of Gu Yuan Kai and the others was a group of beast god puppets. When did they prepare such a method? There was no news about it before. What made Gu Yuan Kai and the others frown was that there were two beast god puppets refined from the bodies of great demons of the Star Soul unification stage. They were like two Dao integration stage martial arts masters. The power of their flesh and blood was earth-shattering as they pounced toward the group. The top two beast god puppets were mainly targeting the Tsangtian Dao Jian, who was suppressing Imo, Shiluo, and the others. Chapter 1239. A heaven-reaching demon ape and an armored black dragon were both great demons of the unity of the stars and souls realm when they were alive, but now they were refined into beast god puppets using a secret technique. These two great demons were known for their physical strength, and now that they were refined into flesh puppets, the power of their blood and flesh was extremely powerful. Gu Yuan Kai snorted at this scene and did not say anything. Just the scene before them was witnessed by the Dragon Clan and Primordial Demon Ape Clan. These two great demon clans would not let this matter rest. The king of the underworld's lineage had also let go of their scruples and went all out. Currently, they were attacking the Taishu Temple and the Hao Ian Mirror together. No matter who won or lost, the Dragon Clan would find trouble with the king of the underworld if they had the strength to spare. Unlike the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King that Lin Feng had refined into a doppelganger, this Black Dragon King that was refined into a beast god puppet by the king of the underworld's lineage was a great demon of the dragon clan of the unity of the stars and souls realm. Facing the two beast god puppets that were attacking him, the Tsang Tiandao Jin let out a sword hum in the void, like the morning bell and evening drum resounding through the heavens. Rays of sword light slashed down, dazzling and blinding, lighting up the entire sky, slashing at the two beast god puppets. The two beast god puppets let out a deafening roar. Not only were their physical bodies powerful, their defensive power was also astonishing, especially the armored black dragon. Although his strength was not as strong as the heaven-reaching demon ape, his defensive power was outstanding, allowing him to resist the Tsang Tiandao Jin's sword light head-on. But the hundreds of millions of sword light that the Tsang Tiandao Jin shot out suddenly condensed into one, turning into a magnificent sword light that focused on a single point of attack. That extremely sharp edge made even the armored black dragon feel great pressure, as if its scales were about to be pierced through. Although the strength of the refined puppets was still powerful, it was still inferior compared to when they were alive. However, after being refined into puppets, both the Tongtian devil ape and the black dragon were unafraid of death and attacked the Tsang Tiandao Jin head-on. While the Tsang Tiandao Jin was concentrating on attacking the black dragon, the beast god puppet refined by the Tongtian demon ape continued to pounce towards the Tsang Tiandao Jin. While Tsang Tiandao Jin was obstructed by the beast god puppets, Mo Shilao led the other Nether Palace cultivators to attack Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Peng, and the others. However, after the Tsang Tiandao Jin had tested the puppet's foundation, he did not continue to attack recklessly. Instead, his sword light made a sharp turn in the void, turning into a dark shadow that evaded the Tongtian demon ape's attack. Then, with extreme speed, he arrived behind Mo Shilao in a split second. Mo Shilao was startled. His body suddenly turned into a sharp black light, blocking the Tsang Tiandao Jin's attack. The Tongtian demon ape's eyes were bloodshot, his face expressionless. He let out a murderous roar without any clear meaning, and with his powerful explosive power, he chased after the Tsang Tiandao Jin. However, the Tsang Tiandao Jin's attack only touched the Tongtian demon ape's body, but he did not linger. He turned into a dim sword shadow, appearing and disappearing in the void, once again evading the Tongtian demon ape's pursuit. The Tsang Tiandao Jin's speed was extremely fast. Other than the Tongtian demon ape, Mo Shilao and the armored black dragon could not keep up with him. However, when the armored black dragon puppet and Mo Shilao tried to attack Yang Qing and the others, they would be attacked by the Tsang Tiandao Jin. Even though he had turned into a dim sword shadow, the Tsang Tiandao Jin's attacks were still extremely powerful, and his lethality was astonishing. Mo Shilao and the armored black dragon simply spread out their formation and assisted the Tongtian demon ape to surround the Tsang Tiandao Jin. The Tsang Tiandao Jin was not afraid, and his sword light kept flickering in the void, fighting with Mo Shilao and the others. However, in this way, the Tsang Tiandao Jin could no longer take care of Si Kongyu, Shun Qifeng, and the others. The group of Underworld Hall cultivators immediately attacked Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Peng, and the others. Si Kongyu, who was leading the group, flipped his palm, and a small temple appeared in his palm. Si Kongyu lifted it up, and the temple flew up into the sky. Its size kept growing, and as a black light flashed, it turned into a huge temple hall with a height of 81 meters and a circumference of 81 meters. The temple did not consecrate gods and Buddhas, but instead consecrated many mournful ghosts with distorted movements. They exuded an extremely uncomfortable feeling, as if they were surrounded by despair, madness, distortion, and evil. But most of all, it was fear. When the black light of the ghost temple brushed past them, the cultivators below the void return realm felt their hearts palpitate, and they fell into a state of collapse and madness in extreme fear. It was the incarnation-grade magic treasure refined by Sikong Yu, the fierce ghost temple. This treasure was taken away by the former king Chu Jiang after Sikong Yu was besieged by Wang Lin, Zhang Lai, and the former king Chu Jiang. However, after the battle of destroying Xian realm, the king of the underworld eliminated the traitor Su Anda and resubdued the people of the underworld hall. This magic treasure naturally returned to the hands of Sikong Yu, who was loyal to the king of the underworld. In the battle that year, Sikong Yu suffered heavy losses, and a large number of the spirit ghosts he refined were destroyed. For ordinary ghost cultivators, it was no different from the pain of losing an arm. From the time of the battle of destroying Xian realm until now, it was difficult to refine powerful spirit ghosts and ghosts again, even if they focused on retraining. However, although Sikong Yu was a big shot in the Ghost Dao, he was different from other Ghost Dao cultivators. His most important combat power did not lie in the spirit ghost that carried him around. Instead, it lay in his many strange and overbearing divine abilities and the treasure, the fierce ghost temple. At this moment, as he gently put his palms together, an incomparably terrifying and huge malicious spirit appeared above the fierce ghost temple. Its waist was connected to the roof of the temple, and its body above the waist spread its arms and let out a sky-shaking ghost howl. Even Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang felt their minds tremble when they heard this ghost howl, and they felt dizzy. Gu Peng, the void return expert of the ancient emperor's bloodline, stretched out his right arm, and a jet-black vine wrapped around his right hand. The vine grew rapidly, and a white flower appeared at the top. As the white flower bloomed, a desolate, ancient, and endless aura spread out. Although the black light of the fierce ghost temple was fierce, after the white flower bloomed, it suddenly became less fierce, and it made people's hearts palpitate. Although the ear-piercing ghost howl still sounded, it was not as frightening as before. Gu Peng activated his incarnation-level magic treasure, the longevity ancient vine, and immediately fought against Sikong Yu and the fierce ghost temple. Beside Sikong Yu stood a man in a black robe. He was tall, and his chi and blood were extremely majestic. However, under the influence of the chaotic death chi of the king of the underworld, he was filled with a strange and ominous feeling. This was a martial arts expert of the void return realm. When the acupoints all over his body vibrated, it was like stars shining. A martial artist yang chi and blood combined with the dark death chi, forming a strange change, as if the extreme yang gave birth to yin. He was the palace master of the Underworld Hall's branch hall, one of the 10 kings of hell, the Turning Wheel King. In the past, his cultivation was also at the primordial spirit incarnation realm. In recent years, he had successfully refined his spirit to return to the void and entered the void return realm. In a flash, the Chakra King's 10 fingers were like hooks and claws, and he folded his arms as if he was spinning a wheel. However, the gloomy aura made everyone shiver, as if they would be torn into pieces in an instant. Among the ancient tribe cultivators, another void return realm expert snorted coldly and took a step forward to meet the Chakra King. The other ancient tribe cultivators also began to fight with the remaining experts of the Underworld Hall. Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang also threw themselves into the battle. Li Yuanfang's figure fell behind, but he did not slow down at all. His hands kept changing gestures, and waves of magic power were released, forming array patterns in the void. Many array patterns fused together to form a huge array. Li Yuanfang took a gourd from his waist, pulled out the stopper of the gourd, and poured out a stream of water. The stream of water shimmered with azure light. It seemed to be a small amount, but when a drop of water fell into the array, it instantly turned into a vast ocean. The entire stream of water fell, and the momentum of the water spread out completely, as if it was endless. Next, Li Yuanfang took a leather bag from his waist and poured out a large amount of fine sand. The fine sand sparkled like stars. The primordial true water and star sand were refined by Li Yuanfang himself using a secret technique. They were treasures specially used to set up arrays. Unlike the eternal sand spell, which refined the primordial true water and star sand into one, under the activation of Li Yuanfang's magic power, the two treasures were clearly separated and combined. It was as if the stars had gathered to form a vast and dazzling Milky Way. The Milky Way combined with the array patterns and talismans, and the array suddenly unfolded. Within the array, the Milky Way turned 9 times, and it was magnificent and magnificent. Under the shroud of the array, everyone felt as if they were in a sea of stars. It was created by Li Yuanfang, the River Luo Heavenly Gates Array, and the Northern Heavenly Gates 9 Melody Heavenly River Array. It was created by comprehending Xianmin Tianzong's 4 symbols heaven-opening scripture and combining it with what Li Yuanfang had gained from studying the 9 Glory Sky Shattering Array. Wherever the 9 Melody Heavenly River Array spread, the Milky Way Array twisted and turned, trapping all the Underworld Hall cultivators. They felt their magic power become sluggish, and countless stars bombarded them. Their attacks toward Yangqing and the ancient race cultivators were diverted by the zigzagging and flowing Milky Way. With this, the situation of the battle suddenly changed, and the Underworld Hall cultivators suffered a great loss. Even the disobedient King Sikong Yu and the Chakra King were affected by the array. They wanted to break the array first, but Gu Peng and the others wouldn't agree. Instead, they cooperated with the 9 Melody Heavenly River Array and launched an even more ferocious attack. Li Yuanfang's expression was calm, and his hands kept changing the hand seals. The 9 Melody Heavenly River Array shone brightly, and it gradually broke through the sky. It started to attract a large amount of stars' power, and it made its power even stronger. Li Yuanfang's expression changed slightly, and he suddenly looked up. He saw that in the meandering Milky Way in the array, a small boat with a black awning had appeared on the surface of the water formed by the combination of starlight and flowing water. A black-robed person stood on the boat with a black awning, and she held an ancient bronze lamp in her hand that looked like a lotus flower. However, the lamp's flame was green, and it looked like a will-o'-the-wisp. That person reached out from the black robe, and the hand holding the lamp was slender and pale. It seemed to be the hand of a woman. Li Yuanfang's expression didn't change. King Pingding. Li Yuanfang wasn't unfamiliar with the opponent in front of him. The Underworld Hall's former hall master, Su Anda, had been captured by Lin Feng, and Xianmin Tianzong had a deep understanding of the Underworld Hall subordinates. The woman in front of him was another Underworld Hall's sub-hall master, and one of the 10 Yama Kings, the King Pingding. She carried 2 Dharma treasures, the black awning boat under her feet and the bronze ghost lamp in her hand. The bronze ghost lamp was the Underworld Hall's Dharma treasure, the spirit convening lamp, while the black awning boat was refined from the immemorial era's human emperor, Emperor Wen's Tao Orthodoxy. Chapter 1240. The Primordial Era was the era when the demon clan ruled over the heavens. The human clan was weak, but it gradually rose with the first emperor's continuous efforts. In the process of the human clan's rise, generations of leaders and powerhouses took their place. From the first human emperor to the last human emperor of the Primordial Era, all the previous human emperors fell at the hands of the demon clan. However, there was no lack of powerhouses who left their names in history. One of the human emperors was known as Emperor One. His reputation shook the world. The first emperor died before he succeeded in refining the immortal Dragon City. The immortal Dragon City was lost without a trace. Emperor Wen's river diagram and inscription of the Luo was the first complete creation Dharma treasure in the history of the human clan. Although it was destroyed along with Emperor Wen by the hands of the primordial demon clan's holy emperor, absolute sovereign Xianshang, it left an indelible mark in the history of the human clan. At the same time, Emperor Wen was also the ancestor of the human clan's Dharma formations. Even today, he was recognized as one of the powerhouses with the highest attainments in Dharma formations in the history of the human clan. Although Emperor Wen's orthodoxy was almost destroyed, his attainments in Dharma formations had always influenced many human clan cultivators in the future. While the king of the underworld's orthodoxy had been dormant for a long time, it had also secretly recruited a large number of devil path cultivators and itinerant cultivators. The current king of equality, formerly known as Lady Miao Yin, was an itinerant cultivator who had accidentally obtained the great era and the scattered inheritance of Emperor Wen's orthodoxy. Later, after joining the Underworld Hall, he turned what he had learned into the orthodoxy of the king of the underworld. After verifying and combining the two, he finally succeeded in becoming a nascent divinity. Although he was only in the nascent divinity incarnation realm, King of Equality's attainments in Dharma formations were so high that he could be counted on one hand in the entire Underworld Hall. In the past, the Underworld Hall Master Suanda had once said that without comparing the strength of divine ability and Dharma power, this woman was above the reincarnation sect master of the Hell Path, Dark Lord, who was in the Void Return realm. As for the black awning boat under her feet, it was a Dharma treasure refinement method passed down from Emperor Wen's orthodoxy during the Primordial Age. The black awning boat was called the River Luo boat. It specialized in breaking Dharma formations of others, and it could also analyze Dharma formations and discern the principles within. In the past, Emperor Wen had forged an even more powerful Luo riverboat. His original intention was to use it to analyze all kinds of primitive ancient formations in the world, so that he could transform them into formations that human cultivators could easily master. It could be used to defend against enemies. It had no other use, but its ability to break arrays was renowned throughout the history of the human race. However, Emperor Wen's Luo riverboat had been destroyed a long time ago, and the method to refine it had been lost for many years. It was to the point that most cultivators had forgotten it. But at this moment, Li Yuanfang, through his 9 tunes heavenly river formation, sensed the mysterious power and aura contained within the black awning boat. He knew that it must be the Luo riverboat refined by King Pingdang. Although it was still a spirit nurturing gray Dharma treasure, its wondrous effects were already apparent. It carried the King Pingdang through Li Yuanfang's 9 tunes heavenly river formation far more freely than the other Underworld Hall cultivators. It even searched for the eye of the formation where Li Yuanfang was. The King Pingdang was also a confidant of the king of the underworld. His temperament was relatively indifferent, but he was loyal and devoted to the king of the underworld. At this moment, he was protecting the king of the underworld with all his might. This kid has yet to form his nascent soul, but the formation he laid seems to be no weaker than that old ghost. The King Pingdang was also calculating the changes in the 9 tunes heavenly river formation. Although the Luo riverboat was powerful in breaking formations, it was also related to the level of the Dharma treasure itself. It also needed to coordinate with Emperor Wen's lineage's special divine ability to calculate in order to be effective. If a cultivator's attainments and talent in formations were not enough, it would be difficult for them to control the Luo riverboat. The King Pingding's talent and strength in formations were extraordinary, so he could naturally control the Luo riverboat to pass through Li Yuanfang's formation. However, it was not enough to break through the 9 tunes heavenly river formation. Therefore, the King Pingdang searched for the eye of the formation, found Li Yuanfang, and directly attacked Li Yuanfang. She looked at Li Yuanfang and gently shook the spirit convening lamp in her hand. The green ghost fire began to flicker violently, and a strange suction force came from a lamp. Li Yuanfang frowned slightly. He did not feel anything strange in his body, but his spirit began to become unstable. It was as if his spirit had left his body and was sucked into the green lamp fire. As his spirit became unstable, the entire 9 tunes heavenly river formation shook slightly, as if it was about to fall into a sluggish state. Li Yuanfang's gaze also fell on the King Pingdang. With a flip of his palm, a rusty brass bell appeared. It was the soul-calming bell. The bell rang continuously, instantly breaking the attack of the King Pingding's spirit convening lamp. He had yet to form his nascent soul, so he could not fully utilize the soul-calming bell. He should not have been able to defeat the King Pingding's spirit-convening lamp. However, as long as the spirit-convening lamp's evil technique was slightly weakened, Li Yuanfang could stabilize his spirit and not be affected by the spirit-convening lamp. Under the black robe, the King Pingding said lightly, "This Dharma treasure of yours originally belonged to the Underworld Hall. Don't you think it's ridiculous to use it to compete with us?" She extended her other hand out of the black robe and lightly tapped the spirit-convening lamp. The dark green flame of the lamp trembled, and a line of fire shot out from it, heading straight for the soul-calming bell. When the line of fire landed on the soul-calming bell, streaks of gray light suddenly surged and enveloped the soul-calming bell. The bell's chimes immediately became muffled, and the evil power of the spirit-convening lamp began to take effect once again. However, Li Yuanfang seemed to ignore this. As his right hand changed its incantation, he continued to control the 9 tunes heavenly river formation. His left hand's incantation suddenly became strange, and he pointed his finger at the soul-calming bell. With his gentle point, the soul-calming bell suddenly vibrated. Then, a pitch-black light lit up on the soul-calming bell, and a faint sound of wind could be heard. Although the black light seemed ordinary, it made the King Pingding's heart palpitate. His intuition told him that there was a great danger hidden within. The next moment, countless black nobility winds suddenly spread out with the soul-calming bell as the center, forming a huge formation. Instead, it followed the dark green line of fire and shrouded the King Pingding. It was the Black Sea Immortal Trap Array that Li Yuanfang had obtained from opening the Western Heavenly Gate. The soul-calming bell's chimes became increasingly muffled and ethereal, almost disappearing without a trace. However, the power within it rose, breaking free from the restriction of the dark green line of fire. The reason why the bell chimes became muffled was because its power had completely merged with the Black Sea Immortal Trap Array. Seeing the Black Sea Immortal Trap Array shrouding him, the King Pingding's body shook slightly under the black robe. The black robe suddenly fell off, and from it, streaks of gray light rushed out. These streaks of light transformed into a roulette-like existence in the void. As the roulette rotated, it seemed like the cycle of life and death, the rebirth of yin and yang. This was the primordial spirit incarnation formed by the king of the underworld's Tao orthodoxy. After the King Pingding revealed his primordial spirit incarnation, the center of the roulette spewed out streaks of gray mist and landed on the Luo River ship below. The Luo River ship, which originally looked like a small boat with a black canopy, did not change in appearance. However, its size had become smaller. It carried the King Pingding's primordial spirit through the void, avoiding Li Yuanfang's Black Sea Immortal Trap Array. At the same time, streaks of gray light surged out of the King Pingding's primordial spirit and quickly formed a mysterious and complicated formation. It was like the 9 palaces of the River Luo and the 9 palaces of the River Luo. From within, a powerful energy wave swept towards Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang's expression did not change. With a soft grunt, the light above his head flickered, and a tall, 4-faced, 8-armed giant appeared in the void. His 8 arms stirred the 8 trigrams, and in front of each of the 4 faces was a shining door. This was the Dharma form of heaven and earth that he had cultivated after attaining the late Yuanying stage. Above Li Yuanfang's Dharma form of heaven and earth, streaks of purple light flickered and turned into mysterious talismans. Then, they arranged themselves according to a unique rule, forming a small but exquisite and complicated circular formation. It was like a round mirror. It was Li Yuanfang's insightful, treasured mirror array technique. The talismans formed by the array technique emitted a dazzling radiance, converging into a mirror-like beam of light that shone on the King Pingding's formation. The King Pingding suddenly realized that Li Yuanfang's technique was similar to her Luo River ship in terms of concept. Although he could not directly break the formation, Li Yuanfang was using the insightful treasured mirror array technique to analyze the mysteries of her formation. How magnificent is Emperor Wen's inheritance? For it to fall to this extent is truly a reckless waste of God's gift. The Dharma form of heaven and earth above Li Yuanfang suddenly let out a deep sigh. Inside the door, corresponding to one of the faces, monstrous flames were burning fiercely. It was filled with the destructive concept of destruction and slaughter. It was extremely ruthless, as if it wanted to incinerate, destroy, and slaughter everything with its raging flames. As the void trembled, another formation began to rapidly form outside of the Nine Bends Heavenly River Formation and the Black Sea Immortal Trapping Formation. The surging flames turned into lines of fire, sketching one formation after another in the air. Then, they converged together to form a huge formation. Although it was launched later, it arrived first. Its formation speed was even faster than the King Pingding's River and Luo Nine Palaces formation. The River and Luo Heavenly Gates formation that Li Yuanfang had created, the Heavenly Fire Slaughtering Gods formation that opened the southern Heavenly Gate. Among the four great formations formed by the River and Luo Heavenly Gates formation, this was the formation with the strongest offensive power. When it was created, apart from Li Yuanfang's own comprehension of Tao techniques and formations, the top-notch formation he used as reference was his master, Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword formation. With a single thought from Li Yuanfang, raging flames spewed out. A boundless sea of fire spread across the void. The raging flames vaguely condensed into the shape of a sword. With a slash of the sword, the King Pingding's newly formed River and Luo Nine Palaces formation was cleaved into pieces before he could exert his strength. The raging flames did not stop there. They continued to charge toward the King Pingding's nascent soul. The Luo River ship was entangled by the Black Sea Immortal Trapping formation and could no longer help the King Pingding escape. For a moment, he could only watch as the raging flames approached him. However, at this moment, the devilish ape puppet that was fighting with the Santian Dao, Jian, suddenly stopped paying attention to the Santian Dao Jian. Even though it was struck by the sword, it did not resist. Instead, it charged toward the battlefield where Gu Peng, Li Yuanfang, and the others were. The Santian Dao Jian was about to give chase, but Imo, Shiluo, and the armored black dragon puppet seemed to be prepared for this. They intercepted the Santian Dao Jian's path after the devilish ape had passed through. The devilish ape puppet suddenly intervened in the battlefield where Gu Peng and the others were. Its raging energy forcefully broke through the Nine Heavenly Tunes formation and attacked Gu Peng and the others. Taking advantage of the fact that his opponent was wary of the devilish ape's sudden attack, the Chakravarti king suddenly pulled himself out. With a flash, he instantly appeared before Li Yuanfang. With a cold and brutal claw, he clawed at Li Yuanfang. Chapter 1241. The Chakravarti King, a martial arts expert of the Void Return realm, flashed above his head. His martial arts' true intent seemed to be condensing into a tangible form, forming an image of the reincarnation of all living beings in hell. His 10 fingers were like hooks and claws, ready to tear the living beings before him into pieces and send them into reincarnation. At this moment, he displayed the martial arts of the underworld reincarnation claw. In a flash, his figure was wrapped in a dense, chilling aura, and he instantly pounced before Li Yuanfang. He did not aim at Li Yuanfang's Dharma form, but at Li Yuanfang himself. His martial arts physical body, which should have been blazing hot, was now exuding a bone-chilling coldness, sweeping up gusts of chilly wind as he attacked Li Yuanfang. Being ambushed by a martial arts expert at close range was a huge disaster for any cultivator who majored in spell formations. Even Li Yuanfang was no exception. After the 9 Tunes Heavenly River formation was broken, the Chakravarti king seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He displayed the astonishing instantaneous explosive power and sprinting speed of a martial arts expert to the extreme. arriving before Li Yuanfang in the blink of an eye. He was so fast that Li Yuanfang could barely react. Being attacked at close range by a martial arts expert of the Void Return realm, this full-powered claw attack could directly tear apart Li Yuanfang's spirit and physical body. However, at this moment, the center of Li Yuanfang's belt suddenly lit up, revealing an extremely complicated spell formation. The spell formation was extremely mysterious and complicated, but at this moment, it was condensed into a square inch, engraved at the center of Li Yuanfang's belt. At this moment, the spell formation lit up not because of Li Yuanfang's will, but because it had been set up in advance. Once Li Yuanfang was faced with a huge threat, it would automatically activate under pressure. When the Chakravarti King's underworld reincarnation claw approached him, the originally shrunken spirit formation suddenly enlarged and expanded, turning into a magnificent and majestic spirit formation. Gusts of invisible and formless astral winds appeared one after another. It was the Nine Heavens astral gale formation that gathered the power of the Nine Heavens formless astral gale. The boundless astral winds piled up in layers, almost condensing into a solid. They had already lost the formless and formless quality of the astral winds. Instead, they were flowing with brilliant colors, dazzling and dazzling. At this moment, the Nine Heavens Gale formation gave up on attacking and focused all its power on defense. The reincarnation claws of the underworld of the Turning Wheel King fiercely clawed at the layer of dazzling astral winds. The horrifying physical strength of his thoroughly tempered body collided with the astral winds, producing a series of ear-piercing noises. The astral winds were shattered, but they continued to circulate and cut the hands of the Chakra King. At this moment, the shapeless storm was like the hardest fine iron in the world. Although a large part of it had been penetrated by the Chakra King's hands, it still managed to withstand the attack of the Chakra King. Be it the Chakra King or the Equality King, their pupils constricted abruptly. This person has purposely prepared the Nine Heavens hurricane formation for defense, to prevent anyone from getting close to him. Li Yuanfang's heaven and earth manifestation let out a loud roar. At this moment, the attack of the heavenly fire god-slaughtering formation changed direction and attacked the Chakra King. His expression was calm, as usual, without the slightest change. Just now, because the Nine Tunes heavenly river formation was broken too suddenly, the ancient race expert who was fighting with the Chakra King was disturbed by the puppet of the heavenly demonic ape. As a result, the Chakra King was unexpectedly able to break free and launch a surprise attack on Li Yuanfang. When the surprise attack happened, because the Chakra King was too fast, Li Yuanfang was unable to react in time. However, Li Yuanfang was never a person who would cram for Buddha's feet at the last minute. Li Yuanfang knew better than anyone about the pros and cons of specializing in formations and not cultivating other remarkable powers. If he was really attacked by a top-notch martial arts expert, even if he could react in time, it was still unknown how effective the formation he set up in a hurry would be. Therefore, Li Yuanfang usually condensed the Nine Heavens astral gale formation and set it up properly. The formation would only attack the enemy when Li Yuanfang took the initiative to control it. Normally, it would be temporarily still. Once there was an attack, it would automatically activate its defense without Li Yuanfang's control to protect itself from the enemy's surprise attack. Li Yuanfang's style had always been to plan in advance, think carefully, and minimize uncertainties and unknown problems as much as possible. He would control the situation and achieve the expected goal accurately and steadily. If the opponent was strong enough to ignore the Nine Heavens astral gale formation and break through its defense in an instant, it would mean that the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. In that case, Li Yuanfang had nothing to complain about. However, if he couldn't break through the Nine Heavens astral gale formation in one blow and gave Li Yuanfang time to react, then it would be Li Yuanfang's turn to counterattack. As the violent heavenly fire god-slaughtering formation rotated, raging flames poured down and attacked the Turning Wheel King. The soul-calming bell and the black nightmare immortal trapping formation rang continuously and merged with the formation. Similarly, it attacked the Equality King and suppressed his spirit consciousness. The Equality King's heart trembled slightly. This person really can't be underestimated. He's still so calm, even when the Turning Wheel King is close to him. Although the Turning Wheel King missed his attack and couldn't kill Li Yuanfang immediately, the threat posed by a martial adept who was close to a formation cultivator was self-evident. However, even when facing the Turning Wheel King, Li Yuanfang still remained calm. He didn't panic even when a martial adept was close to him. While dealing with the Turning Wheel King's attack, he still didn't let go of the Equality King. If he focused on dealing with the Turning Wheel King and ignored the existence of the Equality King, he would be facing a disaster. When the Turning Wheel King and the Equality King worked together, the Turning Wheel King would be the main attacker while the Equality King would assist from the side to break through Li Yuanfang's formation. The threat posed was even greater. He would be able to break through Li Yuanfang's defense with irresistible force. Separating them and preventing the two from joining forces was the best choice to deal with the current situation. Although Li Yuanfang's expression turned solemn, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. He calmly dealt with the Turning Wheel King and the Equality King. Because of Li Yuanfang's unexpected defense, the Turning Wheel King wasn't discouraged after missing his attack. Instead, he let out a hideous laugh and continued to attack Li Yuanfang with the sinister and vicious underworld reincarnation claws. The momentum of the claw was endless, like the cycle of reincarnation, and it was endless. Although Li Yuanfang's performance was beyond his expectations, it was still disadvantageous for a spell formation cultivator to be closed in by a martial arts expert. The Turning Wheel King had already refined his void return body into his physical body. At this moment, he unleashed his martial arts cultivation to the fullest and tore through the protection of the astral wind layer in front of him, attacking Li Yuanfang. His speed was like mist and illusion. In a flash, his figure seemed to have transformed into thousands of claw shadows that besieged him from all directions. In the face of the attack from the heavenly fire god-slaughtering formation, the Turning Wheel King clenched his teeth and faced the attack head-on. He wanted to seize the opportunity to break through Li Yuanfang's defense first and kill him. The Equality King also braced himself. Rays of light rushed out from the gray wheel formed by his vital spirit and strengthened the Luo River ship. With the protection of the spirit convening lamp, he broke through Li Yuanfang's dark sea immortal trapping formation and attempted to rendezvous with the Turning Wheel King so that they could attack Li Yuanfang together. Li Yuanfang responded calmly. He performed many variations of the formation and faced the two experts of the Underworld Palace. Although the Turning Wheel King had closed in on him, the Equality King was also proficient in formations, and the Luo River ship was helping him to break through the formation. Li Yuanfang was calm and tenacious. Even though he had temporarily lost the advantage, he still maintained a watertight defense and did not allow his opponent to take a step forward. However, Li Yuanfang was not at ease. For him, the biggest threat was not the Turning Wheel King and the Equality King, but the heavenly demonic ape puppet that broke through his 9 tunes heavenly river formation and caused a sudden change in the situation. The speed of this beast god puppet was extremely fast. Although the Sangtiandao Jian could catch up with its speed, Mo, Shilaw, and the Black Armor Dragon puppet were also constantly obstructing and besieging the Sangtiandao Jian. In addition to these two most powerful beast god puppets, there were several other beast god puppets with lower levels joining in the siege against Gu Peng, Yang Qing, and Li Yuanfang. A beast god puppet refined by the primordial true spirit realm, Swan Enai, rushed over and also attacked Li Yuanfang. Although it could not activate the purple smoke cosmos thunder of the Swan Enai clan, it still had a strong physical strength, which could not be underestimated. The Sangtiandao Jian turned into a shadow and sped away. In a flash of sword light, the Swan Enai puppet was severely injured. On the other side, the heavenly demonic ape puppet directly tore the 9 heavens astral gale formation that protected Li Yuanfang with a punch. In a flash of sword light, the Tsang Tiandao Jian caught up with the heavenly demonic ape puppet again and forced it to retreat. But Imo, Xiuo, and the black armored dragon puppet also caught up. The battle situation was extremely chaotic. The Turning Wheel King took this opportunity to rush through the broken nine heavens astral gale formation and clawed at Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang looked solemn, but he still remained calm. The heaven and earth form above his head vibrated, and a long river flashing with starlight zigzagged in front of him, blocking the Turning Wheel King once again. This was the nine heavenly bends celestial river formation that he temporarily constructed with his own supernatural power. In a hurry, the Turning Wheel King's claw still broke through the Star River and clawed at Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang's heaven and earth form blocked the attack for him, leaving 5 severe wounds on the huge Dharma form. However, Li Yuanfang's heavenly fire god-slaughtering formation exploded at this moment, and a violent power bombarded the Turning Wheel King, causing him to tremble. However, the power of the Black Sea immortal trapping formation that trapped the King of Equality was inevitably weakened due to the distraction. Slowly, the Luo River ship carried the King of Equality out of the Black Sea immortal trapping formation. However, the Nine Heavens astral gale formation reconstructed its defense. Layers of astral winds overlapped and formed a solid layer of glowing astral winds, sealing the King of Equality outside. However, within the Nine Heavens astral gale formation, the Turning Wheel King's attacks became more and more urgent. He continued to attack Li Yuanfang, not giving Li Yuanfang any chance to catch his breath. Li Yuanfang activated the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation and the Eastern Heavenly Gates Light Dust Transformation formation, combining the Nine Heavenly Bends formation and the Nine Heavens Astral Gale formation together. The formation connected the inside and the outside, and it was capable of both offense and defense, blocking the Turning Wheel King's attacks. However, the Turning Wheel King's speed was extremely fast within a short distance. He shuttled back and forth continuously, and even Li Yuanfang felt overwhelmed. While Li Yuanfang was fighting the Turning Wheel King with all his might, the King of Equality also began to attack the Nine Heavens Astral Gale formation's defense, shaking the formation and assisting the Turning Wheel King. Li Yuanfang's situation suddenly became perilous. His expression was solemn, and he communicated with the Black Sea immortal trapping formation with his mind. At the same time, he manipulated the light dust transformation formation and the Nine Heavenly Bends formation. While he was busy, he suddenly put his hands together. As the raging flames surged, the heavenly fire god-slaughtering formation appeared once again. This was the first time that the 4 gates of the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation had been opened. Chapter 1242. In the void, the Nine Heavens Astral Gale formation transformed into layers of barriers that surrounded Li Yuanfang. On top of the astral winds, there were 4 huge formations that stood in 4 directions. Like 4 heavenly gates, they gradually formed an extremely huge formation. This formation trapped the Chakravarti King and the other kings within it. The Black Hurricane, the Star River, the Blazing Sword Peak, and the glittering dust swirled ceaselessly, forming a boundary that fought against the Chakravarti King and the other kings. This formation of his is truly powerful, and this is still in an incomplete state. At the same time, he still lacks many crucial treasures to set up the formation. The Prince of Equality's heart was heavy. For a late-stage nascent soul cultivator to be able to set up such a powerful formation, whether it is his magical power or his attainments and formations, they are truly beyond common sense. She steered the Luo riverboat and the spirit convening lamp like a lonely boat in the storm, constantly rocking in the mysterious river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation. However, the King of Equality still calmed his mind and continued to deduce and analyze Li Yuanfang's river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation, then contacted the Chakravarti King. The Chakravarti King, who attempted to break the formation by force, was more at ease with the King of Equality's help. Although he was also trapped in the river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation, he was still firmly nailed to the formation I, chasing after Li Yuanfang. If he allowed Li Yuanfang to attack, he would be surrounded in the formation, and the Chakravarti king would probably be slowly tortured to death by Li Yuanfang. Naturally, the Chakravarti king would not sit and watch this happen. Therefore, he kept close to Li Yuanfang and attacked Li Yuanfang directly. The two sides started a huge battle in the river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation. Under the attacks of the Chakravarti king, Li Yuanfang was under great pressure and suffered continuous injuries. However, the Chakravarti king and the King of Equality were also injured by the formation. After the four gates were opened, the river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation had the Black Nightmare Immortal Entrapping formation to suppress the spirit. The Nine Tunes Heavenly River formation had both offense and defense, and the Heavenly Fire God Slaughtering formation. Moreover, it was even more complex and abstruse, making it difficult to defend against. He even guided the strong gales of the Nine Heavens Hurricane formation into the formation to attack the Chakravarti king and the Equal king. However, the river and Luo Heavenly Gate formation, which had opened all four gates, was still incomplete and was still being studied. Li Yuanfang would never use such an imperfect formation that was full of uncertainties unless he had no other choice. However, in this stalemate, Li Yuanfang still opened all four gates of the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation and faced off against the Chakravarti king and the Equality king. The battle between the two sides was extremely perilous. Although the two Underworld Hall Masters were badly battered by the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation and could fall into the formation at any time, Li Yuanfang was also severely injured or even killed when facing the Chakravarti king's fierce close combat. To Li Yuanfang, what was more disadvantageous was that there were still many tricks that he did not understand when he opened all four gates. Therefore, the formation was unstable and could collapse on its own if it was activated for a long period of time. Under the tremendous pressure, even Li Yuanfang's forehead was covered in sweat. However, he did not panic and remained calm. He activated his supernatural power and the changes of the formation to the maximum. In the battle with the Chakravarti king and the Equality king, Li Yuanfang's universal Dharma form, spirit, and physique were all damaged to varying degrees. Moreover, the injuries were gradually worsening. However, his mental state was becoming more and more full. His understanding of his Tao, supernatural power, and the great Tao of heaven and earth had also become more profound. The brand new domain that he could only vaguely see in the past was gradually unfolding in front of him. The principles that he did not understand in the past were slowly becoming clear. A rare hesitant expression appeared on Li Yuanfang's calm face. He raised his head slightly. Although his consciousness was still activating the formation to fight against the Chakravarti king and the Equality king, his eyes were fixed on the void. He seemed to be in a daze. At this moment, Li Yuanfang suddenly thought of the teachings of his master, Lin Feng. Yuanfang, you have a calm and strict personality, but in fact, you are walking the extreme path in another sense. In that conversation, Lin Feng rarely did not start with a joke, but rather went straight to the point, saying to Li Yuanfang, your path needs to be strict, it needs to be meticulous, it needs to be as precise as possible. This is in line with your personality, and it might also be a feasible path. However, there are no absolutes in this world. For example, if the Emperor wishes to use the 3 lives karma curse to understand everything in the past, present, and future, even if his cultivation is high enough, he is still unable to truly be omniscient. Lin Feng looked at Li Yuanfang and said silently, it is feasible for you to pursue a strict and precise goal. However, you need to be vigilant in your heart. In this process, there will always be existences that you cannot grasp or be sure of. When these things really appear before you, you need to be aware of them and be good at dealing with them. Sometimes, while being calm and strict, we, the Tao cultivators, need to have the drive to forge ahead, the courage to make decisions, and the responsibility to bear the consequences. The words of his master, Lin Feng, once again appeared in his mind. The hesitation on Li Yuanfang's face disappeared, and he became determined again. Although he had lost the initiative, if he focused on defense and slowly tangled with the Chakravarti king and the other kings, Li Yuanfang was confident that he would not be defeated. However, the situation was changing rapidly. The ritual of the king of the underworld continued to be carried out. Seeing all this, Li Yuanfang, who had always been strict and steady, made a very crazy move at this moment. He crushed a porcelain bottle and poured out an elixir that seemed to be formed by lingering clouds. Then he swallowed it. The primordial spirit gate, which had been faintly discernible in the past, became exceptionally clear today. At this moment, it was completely visible in front of Li Yuanfang. Today's bloody battle had allowed his understanding of his Tao and mystical powers to make steady progress. He had broken through the bottleneck that he had been stuck in for a long time and had successfully stepped onto a critical point. The only problem was that he was surrounded by enemies. If he continued to attack the primordial spirit realm in such a situation, it would be very dangerous. He could lose his life at any time. It was an action that was close to suicide. Based on Li Yuanfang's usual character, he would never consider such a thing. However, today, perhaps it was because he felt the danger of the situation, or because the hidden spirit in his heart had erupted after breaking through the bottleneck, or because the opponent in front of him was the successor of Wen Huang's orthodoxy and a martial arts expert that could restrain him the most. It made Li Yuanfang feel a sharp spirit that could overcome all obstacles and disregard the danger. At this moment, Li Yuanfang felt that this moment seemed to be like what his teacher, Lin Feng, had said. He needed to make a choice and take responsibility for it. A choice that he did not have absolute confidence in, and the outcome was unpredictable. After today, Li Yuanfang might not be so impulsive. This was the first and last time in his life to take a risk. However, at this moment, hesitation had completely disappeared from his heart. Li Yuanfang's yuaning abruptly left his body and turned into a stream of light. It merged with his worldly Dharma form and blasted open the primordial spirit gate in the void together. The Chakravarti king and the equal kings were shocked by Li Yuanfang's actions. They did not expect Li Yuanfang to attack the primordial spirit realm at this moment. "You're courting death." The Chakravarti king reacted instantly. His eyes turned even colder. He began to ignore the attacks of the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation and rushed towards Li Yuanfang. The equal king also felt annoyed. He drove the Luo River ship through the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation. Then, he changed his hand seals, and the river Luo Nine Palaces formation was reformed. The formation patterns flickered with dazzling brilliance. 9 beams of light descended and shot towards Li Yuanfang. However, just as Li Yuanfang's yuaning merged with the worldly Dharma form, the entire river Luo Heavenly Gates formation suddenly shook violently under his command. Then it broke apart on its own. The violent power shattered the void in an instant. The 4 elements of earth, water, fire, and wind went berserk and stirred the surrounding void into chaos. The Chakravarti king and the equal kings tried to resist the impact. They wanted to take advantage of the moment when Li Yuanfang was at the primordial spirit realm to kill him and destroy his body and soul. However, other than the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation, even the 9 heavens astral wind formation on the periphery fell into a state of chaos at this moment. Sharp and fierce 9 heavens formless astral wind rampaged in the void. This was also the first time in Li Yuanfang's life that he had led the formation into chaos at his own will. Then, he completely lost control and finally collapsed. The collapsed formation was not destroyed by his opponent. Instead, the formation's creator detonated it. The power contained in the formation spread out and immediately turned the vast void around it into a chaotic ocean. The Chakravarti king and the equal kings were trapped in this ocean. Bearing the impact of the chaotic spiritual qi, they could no longer stand firm. After all, Li Yuanfang was Li Yuanfang. Although he was also taking a risk, he would still do his best to prepare himself. He would not send himself into a perilous situation. The Chakravarti king and the equal kings were even more furious. However, they had no choice but to stop temporarily. Although the explosion of such power is violent, it won't last long. The cold, killing intent in the Chakravarti king's eyes almost solidified. You want to break through to the primordial spirit realm? How can it be done in a short period of time? Just as he thought of this, the Chakravarti king suddenly widened his eyes. The equal king also had the same expression and movement. They were both dumbfounded. Li Yuanfang's yuanying merged with the Dharma form of heaven and earth. It was as if he had instantly passed through the illusory door in the void and was baptized by the laws of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The Dharma form of heaven and earth suddenly collapsed and turned into talisman seeds. Each seed was like a small formation that rotated continuously in the void. In the next moment, these talisman seeds that looked like formations gathered continuously in the void. Finally, they turned into a huge Taiji diagram. It was half black and half white. The two levels blended together and rotated slowly. Above the Taiji diagram, a huge 9 palaces diagram appeared. There were 4 heavenly gates that stood in 4 directions. Silently, they served as a foil to the 9 palaces of He and Luo in the center. A calm and deep voice reverberated in the void. It was calm, profound, and grand. The heliocentric enlightenment enters the immortal sect. On Mount Kunlun, Yin and Yang are divided. The 4 symbols and 8 trigrams opened the heaven and earth. The Chiman Duanjia determines the universe. The soul-stabilizing bell was swept up by the Taiji diagram. Then, the Taiji diagram rotated in the void and turned back into a skinny, tanned young man in purple. The Chakravarti king and the equal kings looked at Li Yuanfang, who had reappeared in front of them, in shock. They were all dumbfounded. How can it be so fast? If Li Yuanfang had the ability to prove his primordial spirit realm, perhaps no one would be surprised. However, the fact that he could achieve the primordial spirit realm in such a short period of time was completely beyond the imagination of the Chakravarti king and the equal kings. It even overturned the understanding that they had cultivated for many years. Li Yuanfang, who had transformed back into his human form, looked calm and composed as usual. His expression did not change at all. He put his palms together, and immediately, a huge formation appeared in the void, enveloping the Chakravarti king and the equal kings. Chapter 1243. The huge formation suddenly appeared in the void. The turbulence caused by the destruction of the river in Luo Heavenly Gates formation and the 9 Heavens Astral Gale formation began to gradually calm down after the appearance of the huge formation. A terrifying power shook the void at this moment. It was another river in Luo Heavenly Gates formation, but it was different from the one Li Yuanfang had set up in the later stages of yuanying. The powerful formation before them operated without any sluggishness. The 4 heavenly gates were opened, and the power of the 4 elements of earth, water, fire, and wind interconnected with each other, showing a harmonious concept. As the formation operated, its power continued to increase, becoming more and more terrifying and astonishing. As Li Yuanfang successfully proved his nascent soul Tao, his river in Luo Heavenly Gates formation was finally perfected, showing an extremely powerful power that shook the heavens and the earth. After Li Yuanfang achieved nascent soul Tao, his magical power continued to grow. Not only did the formations he set up become more mysterious, but there were also earth-shattering changes in all aspects of power. With a soft shout, Li Yuanfang's nascent soul shed its human form and transformed into the 9-palace Tai Chi diagram again, covering the sky and the sun. The river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation he activated continued to expand. Not only did it engulf the Chakravarti king and the equal kings, but it also began to spread to the surrounding void and was about to engulf the other underworld hall cultivators and the beast god puppets. Streaks of white, flowing light flashed within the formation. When one came into contact with the flowing light, it was like a river of stars or flowing fire. It looked ordinary, but it was breathtaking. It was as if it could make one sink deep into it without them noticing. Gu Yuankai, Mo Azura, King Yinluo, Sang Tiandao Jian, and the others also noticed the changes in Li Yuanfang. When Li Yuanfang attempted to prove his nascent soul Dao, they were also surprised. They did not expect Li Yuanfang to dare to take such a risky move and break through to the nascent soul realm while fighting with the Chakravarti king and the equal king. Not only did he succeed in breaking through the nascent soul gate, but his speed was also beyond everyone's imagination. At that time, not only the Chakravarti king and the equal kings, but all the other underworld hall cultivators also wanted to kill Li Yuanfang. However, Gu Yuankai, Tang Tiandao Jian, and the other experts were also vigilant and stopped them one by one, but the result was clearly beyond everyone's expectations. Gu Yuankai looked at Li Yuanfang, his heart surging. To have such means at the initial essence soul stage. The personal disciples of the Mystic Gate's master are indeed all geniuses. After Li Yuanfang proved his essence soul, the river Luo Heavenly Gates array was unleashed. The profound and vast power contained within was something that even Gu Yuankai could sense. Mo Shuluo was forced back by the Sword of Heavens, but he was slightly distracted and did not continue to attack. He thought to himself, this person has achieved Essence Soul Dao. I'm afraid there will be more waves in the battle. As far as the eye could see, Li Yuanfang's River Heavenly Gates array continued to expand, engulfing the experts of the Nether Hall one after another. Everything seemed to be replaying the scene when the Nine Melodies Heavenly River array was unfolding. Under the command of King Yama, the Tongtian Devil Ape Puppet once again attacked the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation. The Sang Tiandao Jian was already prepared for this. With a flash of sword light, he pierced the Tongtian Demon Ape's back. Although the Tongtian Demon Ape was not afraid of death after being refined into a puppet, it would still be severely injured if its vital parts were attacked. Under the control of King Yinluo, the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet used one of its hands to block the Sang Tiandao Jian's sword, but its jet black arm was stabbed until it was bloody. However, his other hand slammed heavily onto the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation in an attempt to tear it apart again. The white light of the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation kept flashing, turning into a long river of white light that meandered 9 times, blocking the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet's claws. Upon contact with the white light, the huge body of the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet suddenly stiffened, as if it had suddenly lost its vitality. It became sluggish, as if it was going to turn from a walking corpse into a real corpse. The King of Hell frowned slightly. He knew that this was the effect of the Black Nightmare Immortal Trap formation that he had obtained from the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation. When the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation resisted the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet, it used the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet's weakness to affect the King of Hell's control over the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet. At this moment, the Sang Tiandao Jian's attack began to increase. Under the control of King Yinluo, the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet's body shook, and it jumped up at an extremely fast speed. Its body seemed like it was going to collapse the sky. It broke free from the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation, and at the same time, avoided the Sang Tiandao Jian's attack. Sang Tiandao Jian was about to give chase, but Mo Shuluo and the armored Black Dragon Puppet had already caught up and attacked him. With a flash of sword light, Sang Tiandao Jian once again avoided Mo Shuluo and the armored Black Dragon Puppet, and the Tongtian Demon Ape Puppet was also forced to retreat. Li Yuanfang's River Luo Heavenly Gates formation was still slowly but firmly spreading around. The Chakravarti king and the other kings, who were completely trapped in the formation, were suffering under the bombardment of the formation's power. The Chakravarti king had lost the advantage of close combat. At this moment, the awkwardness of a martial arts expert facing a formation expert was revealed. Trapped in formation and unable to get out, he could only be beaten, constantly attacked by the formation, and it was difficult to reverse the situation. Not to mention continuing to attack Li Yuanfang. It was difficult for him to escape. At this moment, the Chakravarti king felt like he had fallen into a swamp. He could only watch helplessly as he continued to sink into the abyss of despair. The Pingdang king drove the Luo riverboat like a small boat in a storm. In the past, when it came to the formation of others, it had always been successful. But now it was useless. No matter how she deduced, the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation before her seemed to be shrouded in layers of fog. Occasionally, she could see through some of the mysterious changes of the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation, but it only made her sink deeper into despair. The extremely complicated theory of the formation's changes made her feel like an ignorant and helpless child, even though she was proud of her attainments and talents in the formation. Silently deducing the changes of the formation might have been possible under normal circumstances. But at this moment, she was trapped in the formation and faced with the heavy attacks. She did not have the time to slowly deduce it. The violent white light not only suppressed her spiritual thoughts, but also made her fall into an unconscious slumber. Even her consciousness was deprived. Moreover, the white light had a violent attacking power. Under the overwhelming attack of the white light, the spirit-convening lamp in the Pingdang king's hand was the first to shatter. The sky full of attacks made the Pingdang king's heart sink to the bottom. The power of this formation is above that of the Dark Lord of the Void Return Realm. In the process of the Chakravarti king and the Pingdang king's final struggle, they could vaguely feel Li Yuanfang's emotions through the river Luo Heavenly Gates formation. It was an emotion of dissatisfaction, and this dissatisfaction was directed at Li Yuanfang himself. In the previous battle, the Dharma of heaven and earth was injured, and my vitality was also damaged. Although I have attained the primordial spirit Tao, I am still a little inferior to my peak state. Li Yuanfang did not express his thoughts on purpose. His primordial spirit had just formed, and his mind was still immersed in the Tao and divine powers. Thus, he naturally conveyed his thoughts. However, the Chakravarti king, the Pingdang king, and all the cultivators trapped in the formation were dazzled and speechless. While Li Yuanfang was fighting fiercely with the Chakravarti king and the Pingdang king, Yangqing on the other side was also having a good time fighting with someone else. The new generation of the reincarnation sect's Celestial Path sect master, who is also one of the Underworld Hall's Hall Masters and the newly appointed Emperor Song of the 10 Kings of Hell, Tao Lord Tian Tan, Shun Qifeng, was surrounded by white light and attacked Yangqing. The white light condensed into a tall light figure above Shun Qifeng's head. Its head reached the sky, and its feet stepped on the ground. Its figure was incomparably majestic. Even in the void where there was no sense of distance, one could still feel its majesty. The aura that the light figure exuded was ethereal, noble, and proud. It was like a deity looking down on all living beings. The master of the heavenly law, Sakura. White light flashed continuously around the figure of Sakura. As it swept towards Yangqing, it also protected Shun Qifeng, attacking and defending at the same time. In the past, our disciples have fought against each other. Now that we are masters, we have both improved since the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly. Let's have a spar. Shun Qifeng's expression was calm, and he had a smile on his face, as if he was catching up with an old friend. Shun Qifeng looked at Yangqing and said with a smile, "Your sect's divine powers are really powerful. Although your cultivation is in the late Yuanying realm, I admit that I am far from being your match when we are in the same realm. At this moment, I can only be thick-skinned and fight with you in the primordial spirit realm." Yangqing's expression was calm, but there was a hint of indifference. As soon as Shun Qifeng made his move, he could already see that although Shun Qifeng had not cultivated his divine powers to return to the void, his divine powers and Dharma powers had made great progress compared to the time when he was in the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly. At this moment, he was only a step away from the void return realm. Shun Qifeng's divine powers and Dharma powers were strong, and he was one of the best in the world when it came to the primordial spirit incarnation realm. However, Yang Qing's expression did not change at all. After hearing Shen Qifeng's words, he only replied indifferently, "You flatter me." As he spoke, he unleashed his divine powers and Dharma powers. Streams of dark green water that flashed with seven-colored radiance appeared in the void. After coming into contact with the white radiance emitted by Sakra's light shadow above Shen Qifeng's head, the dark green water suddenly changed into white radiance and rolled back toward Shen Qifeng. And what was even more shocking was that the white radiance that Shen Qifeng's divine powers and Dharma powers had actually changed sides at this moment. They were also wrapped up and attacked Shen Qifeng, the original owner. Shen Qifeng's eyes flashed slightly. This divine power seems to be a little familiar. It seems to be called, "All things follow the heart lunar mantra." The divine powers that used to only appear for a short time actually have such power now. Not only is it more complete, but it also becomes stronger as the cultivation of this person increases. The water that flashed with seven-colored radiance was the manifestation of Yang Qing's "All things follow the heart lunar mantra." As Yang Qing's cultivation realm continued to increase, his understanding of the heavenly Tao became deeper and deeper. Initially, he referred to Miao Shihao's light returning mirror, then the shadow ancient mirror of the Shadow Devil Path, and even the myriad mirror of the Lu Yuan clan. After continuously perfecting and analyzing it, it once again shone brilliantly today. Facing Yang Qing's strange and overbearing "all things follow the heart lunar mantra," Shen Qifeng also frowned slightly. He clapped his palms lightly, and a small flame appeared like a red lotus. Chapter 1244. The flame was extremely pure and deep red, like a red lotus blooming in the void. Every petal of the lotus emitted a clear brilliance, presenting an illusory yet intoxicating beauty that made people want to throw their souls into it. It was one of the seven great true fires in the world, the karmic fire of the red lotus, controlled by the reincarnation sect's celestial path. The demonic red flame seemed to want to drag all the forests in the world into the cycle of reincarnation. Shen Qifeng stretched out a finger and pointed. The karmic fire of the red lotus bloomed in the void, blocking the light that was rolling back towards him. He took a deep breath and took out a golden pearl. That golden pearl flickered brightly in the sky and gradually transformed into a giant figure that was even more majestic than Sakra's image, as if it was the god that created all living things. It was a peak incarnation level magic treasure called the Nirvana Pearl. It was the most precious treasure of the reincarnation sect's celestial path, apart from the Six Paths Wheel. In the battle to destroy the Xian realm, Shi Tianfeng died in battle, and the Six Paths Wheel was plotted against by Su Anda, the former master of the Underworld Hall, to create the Book of Life and Death. The remaining precious treasure of the celestial path was this Nirvana Pearl. When Lin Feng swept through the reincarnation sect's celestial path, this treasure was sent to a foreign space to be sacrificed. In the end, it luckily escaped the disaster. After Shen Qifeng took over the position of the celestial path sect master, the Nirvana Pearl became his personal magic treasure. Shen Qifeng raised the Nirvana Pearl. Slowly, the giant image of Nirvana raised its hand and pointed at Yang Qing. With one finger, all things were created. The stone nodded, and the heaven and earth opened and closed. But after creation, it was destruction, and all things came to an end. A golden light shot out from the fingertip of the image of Nirvana and shot towards Yang Qing. Yang Qing's expression did not change. She similarly took out a scroll and unfurled it. A stinky and filthy nether blood river flowed out from within, polluting that golden radiance. The filthy and evil true blood river water continued to spread and roll in the air. Although he was at the late Yuanying stage, the blood river painting was used to defeat the enemy, mainly because of the blood river true water, which could maximize the power of this spirit-nurturing level magic treasure. As for Shun Qifeng's nascent soul incarnation realm, when he activated the incarnation Grey Dharma treasure, the heavenly Brahma pearl, he was also unable to unleash its full power. But the Nirvana's precious pearl is worthy of being a magic treasure at the peak of the transformation stage. Its power is extremely strong. Even though that golden light is continuously tainted by the true water of the Blood River, it still forcefully pierces through the Nether Blood River, still shooting towards Yangqing. Yangqing's expression didn't change at all, but one of his eyes turned pure gold, while the other turned dark green. At the same time, he spread out his left and right hands, and dark green lunar true water emerged in his left palm, while golden solar true fire burned his right palm. The two great powers continued to condense, and then the solar true fire was suddenly injected into the lunar true water. The two completely opposing powers started to fuse, and a mysterious change occurred. In the center of the lunar true water that had merged with the true fire of the sun, the water and fire disappeared together, gradually turning into a vacuum. The power of the vacuum projected outwards, meeting the golden light that was shooting towards Yangqing. When the two sides collided, the golden light suddenly began to disintegrate. The four symbols yin-yang transformation, the transformation of Shao-yang into the void, the yang within the yin, the wonderful state of empty yang. Yangqing raised his head and glanced at Shun Qifeng, and then shouted in a low voice, "Duo!" A clear light rushed out from the top of his head, and in the light, the figure of a tall giant started to condense. That giant had 4 faces and 8 arms. It was Yangqing's worldly dharma that he had cultivated in the later stages of yuanying. The giant stepped on the void, supporting the heavens and the earth. His 8 arms held up the image of the 8 trigrams, and the 4 faces had different expressions. Some were calm, some were cultured and refined, some were grieving, and some were extremely angry. And the most eye-catching one was this tall giant with 4 faces and 8 arms. His figure was shockingly half black and half white. Yangqing revealed his worldly dharma, and then a huge amount of lunar true water and lunar true fire appeared beside him, and then rushed towards Shun Qifeng. Shun Qifeng wanted to use the karmic fire of the Red Lotus to block it, but was blasted apart by Yangqing's solar true fire. Rays of solar true fire that were like needles continuously exploded, forcefully breaking apart Shun Qifeng's karmic fire of the Red Lotus. The karmic fire of the Red Lotus was incomparably evil. Once it touched the body, it would be hard to dissolve, but the dark green lunar river surrounded Yangqing, making it hard for the karmic fire of the Red Lotus to approach. Facing Yangqing's counterattack, Shun Qifeng sighed slightly, and his figure started to change, revealing his Yuan Shun incarnation. Powerful energy waves spread in the void, and Shun Qifeng's Yuan Shun incarnation was impressively another statue of Sakra Heaven. But compared to the transformation of magic power, it was much more condensed and powerful. After revealing the statue of Sakra Heaven, Shun Qifeng shouted in a low voice, "Brahman and I are as one." The power of the Nirvana pearl above his head added to his Yuan Shun incarnation, causing his aura to soar. Then he stretched out the great Nirvana finger, which was much stronger than when he only used the Nirvana pearl to activate it. However, Yangqing didn't seem to care about this, and still displayed the wondrous state of empty yang, using the power of the vacuum to destroy to attack Shun Qifeng's great Nirvana finger. Shun Qifeng looked at Yangqing, and his expression was slightly solemn, and he started to spit out strange syllables that were breathtaking. These strange syllables seemed to converge into an ethereal ballad, which kept singing in the void. It was mysterious and unfathomable, and its meaning was difficult to understand. Hearing this ballad, Emo Shoa tilted his head slightly and glanced at Shun Qifeng. As the current sect leader of the reincarnation sect and an expert of the Tao integration realm, Emo Shoa naturally recognized the strange Dharma spell that Shun Qifeng was using. It was a secret Dharma spell of the reincarnation sect, the reincarnation song. This Dharma spell had been completely lost after the death of the reincarnation Taoist. Even Shi Tianfeng, who had died in the battle of the Xian extermination realm, had not learned it. This Dharma spell was a Dharma spell that had appeared again after the king of the underworld had been reborn, and he had passed it on to Mo, Shiluo, and Shen Qifeng. However, Mo Shiluo was still surprised that Shen Qifeng was able to cultivate this Dharma spell at the primordial soul incarnation realm. This boy's talent is even greater than his master, Shi Tianfeng. In time, he will definitely become a great person. With this reincarnation song and the Brahma Pearl, he will be able to fight against many cultivators of the return to void stage. Hearing the reincarnation song, even Yang Qing's mind became slightly dazed. The heaven and earth Dharma idol above his head actually wavered for an instant. His divine sense also became unstable, as if it was about to leave his physical body and be sent into the cycle of reincarnation. Yang Qing frowned slightly and looked at Shen Qifeng. A cold glint appeared in his usually gentle eyes. At this moment, a change occurred in his pure gold and jade-green eyes. The golden pupil became pure white, and the jade-green pupil became pure black. It was as if his eyes were the two extremes of yin and yang. He clapped his palms together in front of his chest. In the next instant, the jade-green moon true water immediately covered his entire body and fused with it. In an instant, Yang Qing's entire body was jade-green, and it even shone with a watery light. It was as if he was a water person formed from the condensation of the moon true water. Then, in the next instant, his jade-green body became pure black. At the same time, the heaven and earth Dharma idol above Yang Qing's head also underwent the same change. It turned from half white to half white, and in the blink of an eye, it became completely black. On the surface of Yang Qing's body and his heaven and earth Dharma idol, which were both pure black, a layer of dark blue mist began to appear. Within the mist, there was a faint white light shining. Shen Qifeng's expression turned cold. He felt a nirvanic and resolute force from Yang Qing's body. The spiritual energy around her body started to be forcefully separated into yin and yang energy, whereas the yin energy silently turned into nothingness and was extinguished. The four symbols yin-yang transformation, the transformation of the moon entering silence, the yin within the yin, the silent yin extreme realm. Yang Qing, who seemed to have turned into a black water person, could still clearly see his facial features. However, at this moment, there was no expression on his face, and there was no emotion in his eyes. The place where he stood was completely silent. Even though he had manifested the silent yin extreme realm, Yang Qing's body and heaven and earth Dharma idol were still shaking under the effect of the song of reincarnation, which was strengthened by the Brahma's precious pearl. However, at this moment, Yang Qing's emotions did not seem to be affected by anything. He did not make any defense. He clasped his hands together, and a pale white light appeared between his palms. Then, it shot towards Shen Qifeng and enveloped him. Shen Qifeng knew that this was not good. Just as he was about to dodge, he saw that the world in front of him had suddenly changed from day to night. In the night sky, there was only a pale moon, like an eye, staring at him. For a moment, Shen Qifeng felt that his entire body was in darkness. Although the moon was shining above his head, he still could not see anything. When he lowered his head, he could not even see his limbs. There was only endless darkness. In this place, it was as if he had lost all his senses, such as sight, hearing, smell, and other senses. It was as if he had fallen into an endless abyss, sinking and sinking. All his consciousness, memories, emotions, and willpower were lost in the eternal silence, as if he had fallen into an eternal sleep. Only the pale moon above his head was left, watching him sleep alone, silently. After being hit by Yang Qing's solitary moon sleep, Shen Qifeng seemed to have become an unconscious, lifeless clay puppet in the eyes of others. The radiance on the surface of the primordial spirit incarnation was constantly peeling off and shattering. His entire primordial spirit seemed to be silently shattering. At this moment, the radiance of the Brahma's precious pearl suddenly dimmed. However, the constant vibration finally woke Shun Qifeng up. Although Shun Qifeng was startled, he felt that it was difficult to break free from the solitary moon sleep. In his consciousness, there was still only the pale moon shining on him silently, like an eye staring at him, suppressing all the mana in his body and preventing him from using it. His consciousness and thoughts were about to fall into a sluggish state again. But at this moment, a blurry shadow suddenly flew over from his side, as if ignoring the terrifying aura of mana around Yang Qing. It followed Yang Qing's mana and consciousness back to him. In the distant battlefield, Gu Peng and the longevity ancient vine were entangled by two primordial true spirit-level beast god puppets, while the disobedient official Sikong Yu stealthily drove the fierce spirit temple towards Yang Qing and Shen Qifeng. Chapter 1245. The blurry black shadow attached itself to Yang Qing's body. The terrifying aura of nothingness around Yang Qing seemed to be unable to affect the black shadow. As the black shadow approached him, the scene in front of Yang Qing suddenly changed and images appeared. Yang Qing, who had turned into a black water man and seemed emotionless, suddenly trembled at this moment. His eyeballs also moved slightly, and he seemed to have some vitality. But with this change, Yang Qing's state also broke away from the despairing Yin realm and returned to his original appearance. His soul and the heaven and earth avatar above his head seemed to be a little weak. That was the result of being attacked by Shun Qifeng's reincarnation song. But at this moment, Yang Qing seemed to be completely unaware of this. He just stood there blankly with light flickering in his eyes. His mind seemed to be in a mess. He snorted, "Ghost terror curse." In the past, before the battle of exterminating Xian Yi, Wang Lin had fought with the disobedient official king, Sikong Yu, and experienced Sikong Yu's strange and overbearing ghost terror curse. Afterwards, he had also introduced it to his fellow sect members. So Yang Qing immediately reacted and knew that he had been hit by Sikong Yu's ghost terror curse. But this curse was evil and came from the heart. Rather than saying it was a supernatural power, it was more like a thought seed. It was rooted in one's soul and was difficult to resist with ordinary magic power. It was mysterious and had no attack power. Its function was to dig out the deepest fear in the heart of the person who was implanted and then magnify the fear. In this process, the ghost terror curse would grow stronger because of the increasing fear of the person who was implanted. When it reached a certain level, it would completely integrate with the cultivator's soul. Once Sikong Yu removed the ghost terror curse, the person who was implanted would have his soul shattered and die. At this moment, the scenes that flashed before Yang Qing's eyes made him shocked. Countless unbearable memories surged out from the depths of Yang Qing's heart and kept flashing in front of him. The cloud water cave that had been burnt to a crisp, the charred, incomplete, and unrecognizable bones Feng Ting, who had finally reunited but suddenly turned into a venomous ghost, and the figure that disappeared in the poisonous fire that filled the sky. After many years of Lin Feng's careful teaching, after going through all kinds of things, Yang Qing's temperament and willpower are no longer the same as before. Cowardice and hesitation have already completely disappeared from his body, difficult to find anymore. Death, danger, and all kinds of hardships. Yang Qing was no longer afraid. He would not be timid or anxious. He could deal with them with confidence and calmness. In the past, he had a faint sense of inferiority and uneasiness. He often doubted himself. He was afraid that he would let down his master, Lin Feng, and the celestial sect of wonders. Now, he had disappeared. Instead, he firmly believed that he could bring honor to his master and the sect. He cherished the sect, but he didn't rely on it, nor would it become a burden to him. He knew his own path, walked calmly, and naturally shouldered his own responsibilities. To this day, Yang Qing, who had already been reborn, had a tenacious and indomitable will. Even the frightening ghost curse continued to dig up all kinds of past that he once feared in his heart. But in the end, it was all in vain. Everything seemed to have become a thing of the past. However, after the continuous changes in the picture, the final fixing made Yang Qing suddenly shocked. That was the last thing he wanted to face. In the deepest part of his heart, there was only fear, and it was also the greatest fear of his life. The sandstone that sealed the last wisp of Fong Ting's remnant soul shattered in front of him. It turned into ashes and no longer existed. Her last hope was extinguished just like that. This terrifying and desperate scene made Yang Qing feel a chill all over her body. One figure after another appeared in front of him. All of them looked very familiar, but at the same time, he felt a sense of unfamiliarity. A beautiful, purple-clothed girl came before him. It was his junior sister, Luo Qingwu. Luo Qingwu pinched a sword formula with her left hand. The index and middle fingers of her right hand stood together like a sword. A bright yellow sword light extended from her fingertips. Although it was a 3-foot sword, it did not have any murderous aura. Instead, it was full of vitality. The name of the sword was Kuan Yuan Life Spirit Sword. One sword gave birth to all living beings. Infinite vitality was on the sword edge. It took the essence of the vast earth and turned it into its own sword will. Then, it refined the central earth divine light in the living soil and turned it into the precious light of the Kuan Yuan divine sword. It could give birth to life and catalyze vitality. However, Luo Qingwu looked at the sandstone that turned into ashes. She shook her head and dispersed the sword light. She looked at Yang Qing and said apologetically, "Senior brother Yang Qing, I'm sorry." Luo Qingwu was really powerless. Another purple-clothed scholar in a white robe appeared. It was Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi pinched a magic art. A clear and sweet sound of phoenix came from the void. A phoenix shadow formed by flowing lights appeared in front of Yang Qing. It kept circling in the air. There was a flame burning on the surface of its body. In the flame, there was the nirvana of the phoenix. The mysterious aura of rebirth came from the fire. However, after circling for a while, the sandstone that turned into ashes did not show any signs of recovery. After circling for a while, the phoenix shadow fluttered its wings and flew high, dissipating in the void. The nirvana of the phoenix spell did not work. Zhu Yi sighed and came to Yang Qing's side. He said softly, "Fifth junior brother, my condolences." Next to Zhu Yi, a tall and handsome young man appeared. His long black hair hung loosely behind him. A bright light shot out from the middle of the young man's eyebrows. It contained all things in the world and the mystery of the changes of the ancient times. The light seemed to make everything it encountered return to its original point, back to the starting point, back to the origin. However, the light shrouded the void where the sandstone was destroyed. Under the light, there was still no change in the void. "Fifth senior brother, I'm sorry." This tall young man was naturally sure Tianhao. His expression was also unusually solemn. There was no smile on his face. On the left and right of Yang Qing, another figure appeared. One was a handsome young man in a black robe and a purple tight suit. The other was a cold young man in a purple robe with long white hair hanging loosely behind him. They were Xiao Yin and Wang Lin. The two walked out, one on the left and one on the right. They came to the two ends of the destroyed sandstone and stood face to face. Passing on the torch, surviving from the ashes. Yellow Spring's Death Realm, Extreme Tao Rebirth. Xiao Yin and Wang Lin both let out a low shout at the same time, and then two streams of vigorous mana surged out at the same time, supporting the destructive sand together. Countless mysterious white lights surged nonstop. However, no matter how hard the two tried, there was no change. It was all in vain. Xiao Yin and Wang Lin were silent. Xiao Yan's gaze was extremely solemn. Wang Lin's gaze was even colder. Yu Hongyan and Li Yuanfang also appeared in front of Yang Qing. They stood together with Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and Luo Qingwu in silence. The 7 of them suddenly raised their hands and pointed at the void. Then, a 5-colored light suddenly fell from the sky. It was a female phoenix that was completely golden and flashed with 5-colored light. In addition to being golden, this phoenix seemed to be engraved with 5 characters. The head character was virtue, the wing character was obedience, the back character was righteousness, the belly character was faith, and the crown character was benevolence. It was the current Phoenix clan master, the great Phoenix sage of the Dharma ending realm. Xiao Yin and the others bowed to the great Phoenix sage. "Senior, please save us." The great Phoenix sage let out a long and elegant cry. In the midst of the cry, blood gradually seeped out around his eyes. The fiery phoenix blood exuded an extremely powerful aura of life, burning in the void. The concept was similar to Zhu Yi's Phoenix Nirvana incantation, but more mysterious and powerful. The burning phoenix blood wrapped around the gradually disappearing dust, but it was still unable to save the situation. Seeing this, the great Phoenix sage shook his head, indicating that he was powerless. Everyone was slightly sad, but they pulled themselves together. Then, they raised their hands together to form a seal and hit the ground. Black light surged on the ground, and a figure emerged. It looked like a teenager with pitch-black pupils. It was the reborn king of the underworld. However, at this moment, the king of the underworld's entire body was bound by purple clouds, and it seemed like he had been captured. The king of the underworld looked at the shattered dust and could not help but shake his head and laugh. Her soul has been completely destroyed, and she has returned to nirvana. Even I can't save her. In the whole world, from ancient times until now, no one has been able to save her. Everyone glared at him angrily. The king of the underworld smiled slightly and did not say much. At this moment, the purple clouds between heaven and earth were vast and mighty, and a young man in purple clothes stepped out from it. When Xiao Yin and the others saw him, they all knelt on the ground. "Master!" Yang Qing stood stiffly on the spot and looked at Lin Feng blankly. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Lin Feng walked to Yang Qing's side, and with a flick of his finger, he shot out streams of purple clouds, which enveloped the sand. However, as he circulated his mana, the shattered sand could not recover in the end. "Little Qing, it's just like what the king of the underworld said. Since ancient times, no one has been able to save Fong Ting. Even I, as your master, am unable to do so." Lin Feng said regretfully, "I told you before that if you keep that sand, you still have a chance of survival. But now, there's no turning back." The king of the underworld laughed loudly at the side. "Even after a long time of rebirth, I have not fallen to such a state. This woman is not dead, but her soul has been completely destroyed, and she has been annihilated into nothingness. She has completely disappeared from this great heaven primordial world and will never exist again. The world of the living, the world of the dead, they no longer exist." There was no light in Yang Qing's eyes. She stared blankly at the empty void in front of her, and she was lost. In the real world, Yang Qing also stood stiffly on the spot. Thousands of emotions kept flashing in her eyes, and she could not calm down. And on the other side, Shun Qifeng, who was hit by his solitary lunar slumber divine ability, was also gradually breaking apart, and he was walking towards death. However, a strange rune suddenly appeared in the Nirvana Pearl. As the rune flickered, a figure appeared from the Nirvana Pearl, and it gradually turned into a physical body, leaving the pearl. It was Shun Qifeng. Luckily, his magic didn't break the life and death reincarnation talisman that I used for rebirth. Otherwise, I would have really died this time. Shun Qifeng's face was pale, and he stared at Yang Qing. "Sikong, you smiled. It's been hard on you, but this old man can get the best ghost curse user. He's even better than Zhang Lai, and better than ever." Chapter 1246. Shun Qifeng's face was pale. After being hit by Yang Qing's solitary slumber, Even though he managed to escape with the death substitution resurrection technique, his primordial spirit was still injured. He stared at Yang Qing and saw that Yang Qing was standing stiffly in the air. The muscles on his face were twitching and his eyes were flickering nonstop. It was obvious that he was in a state of extreme chaos. Has the fear in his heart been completely triggered by you? Shen Qifeng looked at this scene, but he seems to be doing his best to suppress the fear in his heart. Sikong said indifferently, "Everyone wants to be fearless, but they don't know that fear can often make us stronger and push us to move forward. Fear is our greatest source of trouble, but it is also our greatest motivation to move forward. It is the strongest power in this world." Sikong smiled leisurely. Cultivators of my generation work hard to cultivate and seek for longevity. Isn't it to resist death? Core formation, nascent soul formation, primordial spirit Tao, 3 tribulations of creation, refining creation artifacts, cultivating divine arts, increasing magic power. Along the way, who isn't like this? The fear of life and death, the fear of extinction, all these push us forward. Sikong looked up at the sky and sighed. The power of fear is truly mysterious. Shen Qifeng stood beside him and said silently, "I admire disobedient official king's wise words. But now, let us deal with this person as soon as possible." Sikong said, "That's right. Although he is fearful of his growth and his cultivation foundation, he is the best ghost curse practitioner I have ever seen in my life. However, the most important thing right now is His Majesty's great plan. Everything should be done according to His Majesty's great plan. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, we can only kill this child now." As he spoke, Sikong pointed his finger and the ferocious ghost temple flew towards Yang Qing. The huge ghost on top of the temple stretched out its hands and surrounded Yang Qing from both sides. The ghost continued to let out sharp ghost howls, further increasing the effect of the fright ghost curse, causing the flickering light in Yang Qing's eyes to become more and more urgent. The huge ferocious ghost temple itself smashed towards Yang Qing's head. Shen Qifeng activated the Nirvana Pearl and displayed the Nirvana Avatar. Then he added power to his body and pointed his finger at Yang Qing. A golden light shot out towards Yang Qing. The ghost howls above the ferocious ghost temple shook the heavens and suppressed Yang Qing's soul. At the same time, the fear in Yang Qing's heart became more and more intense. In Yang Qing's sea of consciousness, it was as if there were countless figures surrounding him. All kinds of voices rose and fell one after another, forming a buzzing sound. Gradually, people were unable to understand the specific meaning of the words, leaving only a noisy noise. "My condolences. There's no hope. There's nothing we can do. Give up. Restrain yourself. There's no hope. There's Yang Qing. Qing was Shun. There. Shun, Yang Qing. Yang Qing ignored Sikong and Shen Qifeng's attacks. Her mind was completely immersed in the nightmarish scene. But at some point in time, Yang Qing's dull eyes suddenly moved. The gaze in his eyes gradually became calm and serene. The chaos and fear in his eyes gradually dissipated and became unprecedentedly bright. A faint smile even appeared on his face. However, when Sikong and Shen Qifeng saw the smile, an ominous feeling rose in their hearts. Sikong frowned. At this moment, he felt that the fright ghost curse he implanted in Yang Qing's soul was gradually disappearing. His fright ghost curse didn't contain any magic power. It was purely a will. It was hard for the opponent to remove it with magic power. However, when the opponent removed the fright ghost curse with his will, Sikong couldn't help the fright ghost curse resist. Yang Qing raised his head and looked at Sikong and Shen Qifeng, who were attacking him. Slowly, he said, "Fear can indeed give us motivation. However, it doesn't mean that hope is extinguished. No matter how slim the hope is, it won't affect me from doing my best, even until the very last moment. If you stop moving because of fear, you will be defeated by fear. How can you talk about using fear as motivation to move forward?" As he spoke, Yang Qing and his heaven and earth avatar were ignited with blazing solar true fire. Both of them were covered in pure gold. It was as if there were countless needle-like rays shooting out from them. At this moment, he seemed to have turned into a man made of solar true fire. In the next instant, Yang Qing and his heaven and earth avatar, which was made of golden flames, suddenly turned white. It was as if they had turned into a white man made of fire. The white man was surrounded by ferocious and dark black smoke. There was a faint black brilliance flowing in the black smoke. The four symbols yin-yang transformation, the solar destruction transformation, the yang within the yang destruction despair realm. Yang Qing, who had turned into a black man made of water after entering the solitary yin despair realm, was as calm as a dead man. It was as if he didn't have the emotions of a normal person. Now that he had entered the yang destruction despair realm, Yang Qing, who had turned into a white man made of fire, appeared violent and domineering. His words were like spring thunder as he roared, "Old demon clown, you're nothing more than this." As he roared, 9 rays of black light floated around Yang Qing, who had turned into a white man made of fire. Sometimes they would turn into 9 dragon shadows. Sometimes they would turn into 9 blazing suns. The terrifying power shook the void like a natural disaster. The berserk 9 suns annihilation divine power shook the surroundings and set off wild waves. 9 dragon shadows rose up like hidden dragons soaring into the sky. 9 blazing suns descended like suns bombarding the ground. As the white flames and black light exploded, the golden radiance formed by Shun Qifeng's great nirvana finger was directly shattered and turned into nothingness. In Sikong Yu's fierce ghost temple, the hands of the huge malicious ghost on top of the temple were also blown off. The malicious ghost wailed miserably, and its entire body was covered in cracks. The huge temple hall was directly blown away by the powerful force flying backward. The foundation of the temple, together with the bricks of the walls, were all shattered. The entire building was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. Sikong Yu's face suddenly turned pale. The void-returned ghost body that he had manifested trembled violently. Black fog spread out from his body. His body, which was closely connected to the fierce ghost temple, was also heavily injured by the 9 suns' destruction. As for the finger that Shun Qifeng used to cast the great nirvana finger, starting from the tip, it kept shattering. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't save it. He could only watch as his entire arm turned into nothingness, starting from his finger to his shoulder. His primordial spirit and the nirvana pearl were both heavily injured. The two of them looked at Yang Qing, who was gradually escaping from the yang destruction despair realm, with lingering fear in their hearts. Yang Qing had returned to his original appearance. However, he and the heaven and earth dharma idol above his head were extremely weak. Whether it was the tiny solitary slumber or the 9 suns destruction, they were both dharma arts that consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, they contained violent Tao annihilation power. While they were extremely powerful, they would also cause Yang Qing harm and burden himself. However, Yang Qing's expression was calm and peaceful at this moment. There was still a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. His current mental state seemed to be unprecedentedly relaxed and at ease. 6th Junior Brother, allow me to be frivolous for once. I'll have to trouble you. Yang Qing suddenly sat cross-legged in the void. As the light flickered above his head, the figure of a young man appeared. He looked exactly the same as Yang Qing when he was 14 or 15 years old. It was his Yuaning body. At this moment, it was the time when Li Yuanfang re-established the river and Luo heavenly gates formation after attaining the primordial spirit realm. It was the time when the Chakra King, the Equality King, and the others were all involved in it. Hearing Yang Qing's words, Li Yuanfang looked over. As if he knew what Yang Qing was thinking, there was a hint of concern in his eyes. 5th Senior Brother, you're not in a good state now. The accumulation of your Dharma power is still some distance away from the peak of the late Yuanying realm. Yang Qing smiled. Don't worry, I'm prepared. Previously, he practiced medicine outside all year round and had little time to cultivate. It was not until not long before the war between the two worlds started that he returned to Yujing Mountain to cultivate in seclusion and achieve the late Yuanying realm. After that, although he also cultivated in seclusion in the Xintian time cave for a long time, constantly nourishing and accumulating Dharma power, he was still some distance away from the peak of the late Yuanying realm. Later on, after experiencing Ning Wanga's illusory dream world, his state of mind and willpower had already undergone a round of cleansing. After waking up from the dream, he continued to study the Tao and comprehend the great Tao, until he was ordered by Lin Feng to participate in the battle against the king of the underworld. At this moment, although the accumulation of his Dharma power was still insufficient, he could already see the faintly discernible door in the comprehension of the Tao. At this moment, after experiencing Sikong Yu's ghost terror curse, Yangqing once again surpassed himself and perfected himself. This caused his state of mind and willpower to gradually approach perfection. Yangqing took out a small porcelain bottle and took a deep breath. There was a cloud of qi in the porcelain bottle that was sucked into his mouth. Li Yuanfang's river and Luo heavenly gates array continued to spread and expanded to where Yangqing and the others were. It directly swept Yangqing into the array and protected him. Seeing this, Sikong Yu and Shun Qifeng knew that things were not going well. They thought of the scene when Li Yuanfang had proven his essence soul Tao. Even though Li Yuanfang's river and Luo heavenly gates array was extremely powerful, Sikong Yu and Shun Qifeng still gritted their teeth and attacked together, wanting to stop Yangqing's next move. In the river and Luo heavenly gate array, Yangqing's expression was calm. He opened his palm and revealed a few jade stones. These jade stones were crushed by him, and a massive amount of essence qi was released from them. This was a treasure that Yangqing had obtained by chance when he was traveling around the world. It contained a large amount of spiritual qi. The few jade stones added together was almost comparable to a cloud forest tree from back then. Previously, Yangqing's state of mind was insufficient, and the accumulation of his dharmic powers was also insufficient. Both of them slowly cultivated and improved together. At this moment, his state of mind was already sufficient. What he lacked was the accumulation of dharmic powers. It was just like when Zen Master Dade was trying to break through to the third level of the Pure Land realm of the Golden Body realm. After going through many trials and consuming the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill, the illusory essence soul door in the void started to become clear in front of Yangqing. At this moment, with these jade stones and the supplement of Xianmin Tianzong's own elixirs, Yangqing's damaged soul and heaven and earth Dharma idol started to recover continuously. The massive amount of spiritual qi accumulated pushed his yuanying to continuously strengthen. When his yuanying was strengthened to the extreme, Yangqing suddenly let out a clear roar. The yuanying turned into a stream of light and fused with the huge heaven and earth Dharma idol. Then they attacked the essence soul door together. Chapter 1247. When Yangqing's yuanying finally grew to its limit, it transformed into his appearance when he was 15 or 16 years old. It turned into a stream of light and rushed into his heaven and earth form. Then, the two of them combined and pushed open the door of the primordial spirit in the void. At this moment, countless scenes flashed through Yangqing's mind like a flashing lantern. When he was young, he learned Taoism in the Cloudy Cavern. He and Fong Ting were childhood sweethearts. They got to know each other when they were young and made a promise to each other. Then, there was a sudden change. The Cloudy Cavern was burned to a white ground. Fong Ting could not tell if she was alive or dead. His life changed drastically overnight. Later, he was saved by his current teacher, Lin Feng. From then on, he lived in Xianmin Tianzong and successfully became a disciple of Lin Feng. From the beginning, he was a yes man and had doubts about himself. Then, his mind gradually became stable and his goal became clear. Under the careful guidance of his teacher, Lin Feng, he became more mature and confident. But then there was a sudden change. The truth of the cloudy cavern catastrophe was revealed in front of him. What shocked him even more was that Fong Ting appeared in front of him again. But before the two of them could enjoy the joy of reunion, they immediately felt the tragedy of parting again. It was a reunion after a long time, but it was hard to say whether they should be happy or sad and resentful. Finally, when Fong Ting's figure fell in the poisonous fire to Yang Qing, it was as if the world was completely shattered in front of his eyes. All of these turned into clear scenes that flashed through Yang Qing's mind. The scenes were so unforgettable, but they seemed to leave no trace. Such a contradictory feeling, but Yang Qing's mind reached a perfect unity. Finally, it turned into a consistent will. He let out a silent but shocking cry. Primordial spirit, primordial spirit, primordial spirit. Yang Qing's yuanying and the heaven and earth form merged. It passed through the door in the void and accepted the baptism of the great way of heaven and earth. His Dharma idol of heaven and earth collapsed with a loud rumble, transforming into numerous seed talismans. Each seed was like a tiny ball of primal chaos aura, within which dazzling light could be vaguely seen. Then, these air masses gathered together and formed a huge Tai Chi diagram. It was half black and half white. Slowly, the two levels fused and rotated. On top of the Tai Chi diagram, there were two huge talismans, one gold and one silver, alternating between rising and falling like the sun and the moon. A gentle yet proud singing voice rang out calmly in the void. After the calamity, I kowtowed to the Jade Capital. The Milky Way restores time. The yin and yang are stable. The heaven and earth are peaceful. The sun and moon are bright. This clear song spread out from outside the river path heavenly formation and resounded through the sky, and it entered into the ears of Sikong Yu and Shun Chifeng instead, causing their expressions to become even gloomier. Li Yuanfang, who was sitting in the river Luo heavenly gate formation, revealed a smile and said with a hint of joy, "Congratulations, fifth senior martial brother, for reaching the nascent soul realm and attaining immortality." The sun and moon Tai Chi diagram spun in the void and kept the blood river painting. Then, it turned back into a young man in purple. It was Yang Qing. Yang Qing looked at the center of the formation, at Li Yuanfang, who seemed to be sitting on top of the Milky Way. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, sixth junior brother Dao 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 Dao." After he finished speaking, he nodded at Li Yuanfang and turned to walk out of the river Luo heavenly gate formation. Li Yuanfang seemed to know what he was thinking and immediately opened the formation to let Yang Qing out. Yang Qing did not face Sikong Yu and Shun Chifeng the moment he came out of the formation. The light in front of him dimmed. Then he saw a huge Tongtian demon ape with bulging muscles. Its violent blood and qi shook the world. It was the Tongtian demon ape that was refined into a beast god puppet. It appeared above Yang Qing and clawed at Yang Qing's head. This heaven-reaching demonic ape puppet was no longer as powerful as it was when it was alive. There were clear wounds on its body from the sword of the heavens, and its aura was no longer as powerful as it was when it first appeared. However, its power was so great that it seemed as if it could tear through the void with a single hand. It was still not something that cultivators below the Dao integration stage could withstand. Most Void Return cultivators would be severely injured if they were attacked by this Tongtian demon ape puppet. As for Primordial Spirit embodiment stage cultivators, they would be killed in one blow. When Yang Qing retreated into the formation to break through to the Primordial Spirit embodiment stage, Sikong Yu and Shun Chifeng immediately realized that the situation was not good. Both of them were pragmatists. Without any hesitation, they immediately contacted King Yanluo and ordered the Tongtian demon ape puppet to wait for an opportunity. As soon as Yang Qing appeared, it temporarily shook off the Sangtian Dao, Jian, and rushed toward Yang Qing. Yang Qing appeared in the formation and looked up at the terrifying Tongtian demon ape puppet. In a flash, he transformed into the sun and moon Tai Chi diagram again. Above the gigantic Tai Chi diagram, two mysterious runes, one gold and one silver, flickered alternately. The golden runes burned and the white flames surged. Thick smoke like black light drifted in the void. The silver runes seemed to solidify and instantly turned pitch black. As the icy blue mist lingered, a pale white light flickered. The two runes alternated and hovered in the void, forming a gigantic ball of air. Dazzling light surged in the ball of air. Yin and yang complemented each other, and the light became brighter and brighter. It was like the first ray of light when the universe was created. Wherever the light reached, the spiritual chi in the void would separate into yin and yang. Then, they would fuse again and change continuously, displaying the profoundness of creation. This dazzling light completely shot out from the ball of air and turned into a light screen, blocking the Tongtian demon ape puppet's gigantic claw that seemed to be able to pluck the stars and the moon. The Tongtian demon ape puppet's eyes turned crimson. It increased the strength of its claw, and the violent power shook the light screen, but it was unable to shatter it. Not only did Sikong Yu and Shun Qifeng's faces turn grim, but the other people on the battlefield were also shocked when they saw this. Even if this sky-piercing demonic ape puppet is far weaker than a real, sky-piercing demonic ape at the unity of the Astral Soul realm, its strength isn't something a return to Void Realm cultivator can contend against. But this kid has only just formed his primordial spirit. How can he have such a powerful cultivation base? Thinking of Xiao Yin and the others from before, as well as Li Yuanfang who was at the side, everyone's astonished emotions calmed down again. A person's figure appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. No wonder, they are all that person's direct disciples. But thinking of this, everyone could not help but smile bitterly with a complicated expression on their faces. The Sangtian Dao Jian sword flashed and stabbed towards the Tongtian demon ape puppet again, forcing it to retreat. As for the sun and moon Tai Chi diagram that Yang Qing transformed into, it spun in the void and turned into a ray of light, rushing towards Sikong Yu and Shun Qifeng. Sikong Yu and Shun Qifeng were shocked and started to retreat. But the ray of light had already rushed in front of them and turned back into Yang Qing. Yang Qing looked at Shun Qifeng, and a golden flame suddenly lit up on her body. The flame instantly turned white and rose up into a radiance that looked like black smoke. After entering the Yang extinguishing despair realm, Yang Qing looked like a white flaming person. Her words were like a series of thunderclaps. It has indeed been a while since we last met after the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, but it seems that I have improved a little more. As she spoke, Yang Qing directly reached out to grab Shun Qifeng. Shun Qifeng naturally did not dare to stretch his neck and let himself be killed. The Brahma Pearl flashed with a golden radiance and blocked in front of him. However, after the huge Nirvana avatar was grabbed by Yang Qing, it immediately burst into flames with crackling sounds. Rolling black light quickly spread from the Nirvana avatar's body, and a disaster-like aura spread out, burning the Nirvana avatar. Shun Qifeng let out a muffled groan, and the Brahma Pearl's radiance instantly dimmed, as if it was covered in dust. Shun Qifeng pointed at the space between his eyebrows and took a deep breath. Spiritual light flashed above his head, and a huge spiritual formation rune floated in the sky, shrouding him in rays of white light. Reincarnation Sect's secret divine ability, the Great Nine Death Reincarnation Curse. Under the white light, Shun Qifeng's injuries recovered quickly. Even his arm that was broken due to the damage to his primordial spirit was regenerated. The power of the Brahma avatar also increased. Seeing this, the white flaming person Yang Qing's expression did not change at all. Her hand was still holding on to the Brahma avatar, and she said, "9 suns extinguishing." The 9 rays of black light were like hidden dragons rising to the sky or suns falling to the ground. They vibrated at the same time and directly destroyed the Brahma avatar that had just shown signs of recovery. The violent black light devoured Shun Qifeng and tore his primordial spirit apart. Shun Qifeng shouted angrily, and his primordial spirit shook violently. Apart from the Samsara talisman, the second death substitution rebirth technique began to take effect. This was the reincarnation sect's most powerful death substitution technique, the reincarnation art. It could allow Shun Qifeng to be reborn in the reincarnation sect's celestial realm. But the terrifying black light completely imprisoned Shun Qifeng's primordial spirit, cutting off the connection between his primordial spirit and the resurrection treasure that he had left in the depths of the reincarnation sect. The ferocious power shook the void and completely killed Shun Qifeng. When Sikong Yu saw this scene, his heart sank to the bottom. He did not attempt to rescue Shun Qifeng, and he took the opportunity to retreat. But at this moment, Yang Qing turned to look at him. Maybe it's the arrogance of someone who has just formed a primordial spirit. I suddenly have an idea. I'm thinking. The white flames and black smoke on his body suddenly dissipated, and he retreated from the Yang, extinguishing despair. His body flashed with the rays of light that he used to block the heavenly, demonic ape puppet. When I no longer worry about personal gains and losses, and am restrained by cowardice and hesitation, and devote myself to a battle. With a flash of light, Yang Qing caught up to Sikong Yu. He turned into a ray of light and turned around in the void, easily avoiding the ferocious spirit's temple. The rays of black light on the ferocious spirit's temple and the spells that Sikong Yu had cast could only chase after the afterimage of the light, shuttling through the void in vain. The cultivators of the same realm in this world. Yang Qing suddenly appeared in front of Sikong Yu. He stretched out a palm and spread his fingers, covering the top of Sikong Yu's head. How many of them are my match? This was the first and only time in Yang Qing's life that he spoke such arrogant words. Following this sentence, the light on his palm surged and turned into a terrifying light pillar that seemed to be able to pierce through the void and hit Sikong Yu. This technique was called the Silver River Heavy Light. Chapter 1248. Yin and Yang complemented each other. Milky Way Heavy Light. A magnificent pillar of light shone in the void, as if it had broken through the Milky Way and pierced through the universe. Yang Qing's proud voice reverberated in the surroundings. Sikong Yu's void return ghost body was turned into nothingness by the horrifying Milky Way Heavy Light. He wanted to activate the evil ghost substitution technique, but he found that his primordial spirit and void return ghost body were locked down by the Milky Way Heavy Light. He could only wait for his death. His void return Dharma body turned into black smoke and dissipated in the light. Immediately after, his primordial spirit also disintegrated instantly. Netherworld Ancient Destruction Curse. Sikong Yu felt the threat of death. His primordial spirit shook violently, and rays of black light shot out from his body, bombarding in all directions. However, the rays of black light that were filled with destructive power all disappeared under the Milky Way Heavy Light. Sikong Yu raised his head in shock. Above the void, at the top of the Milky Way Heavy Light, there were golden and silver patterns of the sun and moon rotating alternately. That was Yang Qing's palm. No matter how much he resisted, it was just a last-ditch struggle. Sikong Yu's void return Dharma body was completely destroyed, and his primordial spirit also disintegrated. Yang Qing looked at this scene silently. What? The death substitution technique that the king of the underworld set up for you can only be used once in a person's life? No wonder it's so effective. Sikong Yu raised his head and looked into Yang Qing's eyes with a complicated expression. I didn't expect that I would die in your hands. Haha. Speaking of which, your life has undergone an earth-shattering change because of Zhang Lai. However, under my guidance, Zhang Lai has walked on a completely different path. At the end of the day, only by killing Zhang Lai and then killing me can you be considered to have severed the old grudge between you. Yang Qing shook her head. It's meaningless to talk about this now. To me, the king of the underworld seized the Hao-Ian mirror and endangered the situation of the divine land in the war between the two worlds. Thus, I tried my best to stop him. You protected him and blocked my path, so I killed you. It's that simple. Seekong wanted to say something else, but his primordial spirit was completely destroyed by the Milky Way heavy light. The Underworld Hall's branch hall master, the Yama Kings of the 10 Halls, and after the Song Emperor Shen Qifeng, the disobedient King Seekong, you had also fallen. The sudden change in the battle caused Song Tiandao Jian, Gu Yuankai, Yama King, Imo, Shiluo, and the others to look over in shock. Shen Qifeng was previously a disciple of the reincarnation sect's previous sect master, Shi Tianfang. After the Annihilation Battle, he secretly followed the king of the underworld to cultivate. In the past, he was also a rising star whose name shook the entire divine land. His talent even surpassed that of his master, Shi Tianfang. In the future, he would become a giant figure. After the Annihilation Battle, Shen Qifeng took over the position of the Reincarnation Sect's Celestial Path Sect Master and went into seclusion with the Reincarnation Sect, causing the world to gradually forget about him. However, few people knew that the king of the underworld had been secretly observing him all these years, intending to take him in as his 5th disciple. But at this moment, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. No matter how much hope he had, no matter how bright his future was, it was all meaningless. This powerful cultivator of the new generation who had yet to truly unleash his full potential had become a sacrifice for the first battle after another person had proven his primordial spirit Tao. As for Seekong Yu, he had been an elder of the 10,000 Ghost sect many years ago. After the 10,000 Ghost sect was destroyed, he was the only one among the primordial spirit realm cultivators in the sect who had managed to escape. His ghost Tao cultivation could be said to be top-notch in the world. Even among the Void Return cultivators, he was an extraordinary existence. He became the king of the underworld's trusted aide, fooling Su Anda, Zhang Lai, and the others to sound the first death knell for Su Anda's rebel forces. But today, Seekong Yu, who had been free and unfettered for thousands of years, was also buried here, heading towards the end of his path. For Gu Yuankai and Song Tiandao Jian, they had seen the divine powers of Xiao Yin and the others, and they had just witnessed Li Yuanfang's methods. In their eyes, it was not surprising that Yang Qing had killed Seekong Yu and Shen Qifeng after successfully proving her primordial spirit Tao. But the victory came so easily that Seekong Yu and Shen Qifeng did not even have the slightest hope of escaping. They could not help but feel surprised. At this moment, an earth-shattering roar came from the river Luo, Heavenly Gates formation on the other side. It was just that this roar was filled with despair, no matter how one listened to it. That roar came from the Chakra King. At this moment, he was trapped in the river Luo, Heavenly Gates formation, and was constantly being attacked by the formation. It was difficult for him to continue. The powerful formation was like a millstone, squeezing the Chakra King in the center of the millstone and crushing him continuously. It was also like a huge spider web, and the Chakra King was like a flying insect stuck on it. The more he struggled, the more powerless he became. The Equality King, who was also trapped in the river Luo, Heavenly Gates formation, was completely silent at this moment. He had manifested his primordial spirit incarnation and was struggling bitterly to control the Luo riverboat that was on the verge of breaking. Li Yuanfang sat in the formation silently, issuing order after order in an orderly manner. Although it was not as fierce as Yang Qing's, it was still exuding an irresistible and imposing aura. With an irreversible momentum, he crushed the Chakra King and Equality King step by step in the river Luo, Heavenly Gates formation. At the same time, the huge formation was still expanding outwards, sucking in the Underworld Hall's cultivators and beast god puppets into the formation, attacking and killing them. The omnipresent formation was like a huge whirlpool, sucking in the surrounding enemies. Seeing this terrifying array formation, even Gu Peng and the other ancient race cultivators felt their hearts tremble. Some people chose to enter the array formation and cooperate with it to kill enemies faster. Some people subconsciously retreated. Even their allies and companions didn't want to approach this array formation that was like an abyss of death. Song Tiandao Jian looked at this scene and was slightly absent-minded. Be it Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others, or the two young people in front of me now, they are far superior to their peers. Although Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, and the others had shown brilliantly in this war between the two worlds, starting to move from the edge to the center on the highest stage of the Tianyuan Great World. Although Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and the others had achieved the primordial spirit and ascended the great Tao, they had also begun to transform their deep potential into strength, attracting the attention of the world. But at this moment, Song Tiandao Jian had a strong feeling that until now, Xianmen Tianzong was still in a state of rapid growth. Xiao Yin and the others were still in a state of hidden dragons rising to the sky. As long as they did not fall midway, the height of their future was unimaginable. Just thinking about it was enough to make people feel dazzled. Other than the fact that it was limitless, there was no other way to describe it. Gu Yuankai also had a complicated expression. Previously, when the battle achievements of Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and the others spread, and what he witnessed at this moment with his own eyes, it touched him more than Song Tiandao Jian. The rumors are true. The higher the realm of the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators, the more their strength surpasses other cultivators of the same realm. At this moment, Gu Yuankai suddenly had a thought. In the whole world, only Taishu Temple can compete with them. But if this continues to develop, the only opponent of Xianmen Tianzong will be themselves. Right now, I can already see the first signs. Thinking about the overall situation of the war between the two worlds and the crisis of Taishu Temple and the Xian Sea, this ancient clan elder who had always been inclined to Taishu Temple felt even more complicated at this moment. Yang Qing let out a long roar in the void and unleashed her primordial spirit incarnation, transforming into the appearance of the sun and moon Tai Chi diagram. Li Yuanfang, who was in the river Luo Heavenly Gate formation, also did the same and manifested the primordial spirit incarnation of the nine-palace Tai Chi diagram. The two of them began to work together and walked toward the battlefield where the mighty figures like Song Tiandao, Jian, and Gu Yuankai were. King Yama, the king of the underworld, and Mo Shuluo all felt a slight chill in their hearts. While facing Gu Yuankai, the South Pole treasure gourd, and the Song Tiandao, Jian, even the armored black dragon puppet and the heaven-reaching demonic ape puppet, Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang's approach made these great cultivators of the Tao integration realm feel immense pressure. At this moment, the battle began to tilt in favor of the allied forces of Xianmen Tianzong and the ancient imperial family. The group of powerful cultivators continued to close in on the black three-tiered altar in the void. King Yama, Mo Shuluo, and the others were forced to retreat step by step. Their space of activity was constantly being compressed, and their line of defense was on the verge of collapse. On the dark altar, the youthful king of the underworld was very happy. He turned his head and looked down at the altar. He looked at King Yama and the others who had fallen into a bitter battle. He looked at Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, and the others who were advancing step by step. His expression did not change, but his eyes had completely turned black at this moment. However, after a short while, the void on the other side suddenly began to shake violently. A boundless blood cloud appeared, directly occupying half of the void. Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Gu Yuankai frowned at the same time. Taoist blood river. The terrifying blood cloud tumbled and cracked. From the cloud, surging rivers of blood flowed out. Countless rivers of blood gathered together, turning into a large sea of blood that filled the surroundings. On the sea of blood stood an old man in white with a bloody glint in his eyes. It was Taoist Blood River. Although Gu Jun could resist Taoist Blood River's attack against Yan Nanlai, If Daoist Blood River wanted to retreat, Gu Jun could not do much. He could only chase after him. White lotuses followed closely behind the sea of blood, covering the void. Gu Jun's figure also appeared. Although Daoist Blood River, who had been refined into an evil soul, could not activate the Dharma-ending calamity, his appearance here against Yang Qing, Gu Yuan Kai, and the others would undoubtedly be a massacre. After returning to the vicinity of the king of the underworld, Daoist Blood River's magic power increased. Even with Gu Jun's longevity lotus, it suddenly became incomparably strenuous to fight against him. He was gradually losing. Gu Jun had no intention of fighting Daoist Blood River head-on. White lotuses bloomed, protecting Yang Qing, Li Yuan Fong, Gu Yuan Kai, Cang Tiandao Jian, the South Pole Treasure Gourd, and the other ancient race cultivators. Slowly, he retreated. Daoist Blood River did not chase after him. He stood in front of the black altar. The monstrous sea of blood protected the black altar in the center. Whether it was Gu Jun and the others, or Yama King, Imo, Shuo, and the others who had survived the disaster, they were all bewildered. With Daoist Blood River's protection, no one could approach the black altar. On the other side, Yin Nanlai, who was using the Blood Soul calming spell, was also undisturbed. What is the king of the underworld planning? For a moment, everyone was puzzled. Chapter 1249. Yin Namlai wanted to use the special effects of the Blood Soul Calming Curse to kill his own ancestor, Yin Xinghe, who had turned into an evil soul and was controlled by the king of the underworld as his puppet. In a time when the war between the two worlds had reached its climax, where the swordsmen of the human race and the demonic race were locked in a fierce battle, Yin Namlai's method could be considered the least costly and most likely to succeed in ruining the emperor of the underworld's plans. The king of the underworld was well aware of his intentions and had been secretly guarding against this. Previously, Yuming Daoist brought the Book of Life and Death, and Blood River Daoist's evil soul had gone out to search for Yin Namlai and launch a surprise attack, all to destroy Yin Namlai's Blood Soul Calming Curse ritual. But Zhou Diliang Pan brought the first imperial palace, and Gu Jun brought the longevity lotus throne to protect Yin Nanlai and buy time. On the other hand, the king of the underworld's netherworld altar was gradually broken through by Yang Qing, Li Yuan Fong, Gu Yuan Kai, and the rest. To the king of the underworld, whether it was Yang Qing, Li Yuan Fong, Gu Yuan Kai, Cang Tiandao Jian, or the South Pole Treasure Gourd, none of them posed a threat to him. But if the ritual was interrupted because of this, it would ruin his plans, and he would not have such a good opportunity in the future. So the king of the underworld finally called Blood River Daoist back to protect him. Blood River Daoist returned, and immediately the netherworld altar was impregnable, and no one could take a step past it. If not for Gu Jun bringing the longevity lotus throne, Yang Qing, Li Yuan Fong, Gu Yuan Kai, and the rest would all have perished under the sea of blood. But in this way, Yin Namlai's side was empty. The wisdom of the king of the underworld's action was questionable. He has a way to deal with Taishu Temple's Yin Monastery Head, our attack on the altar, and Yin Monastery Head killing Yin Xinghe with the Blood Soul Calming Curse. The latter is more of a threat. Gu Yuankai stood beside Gu Jun and said in a deep voice, even if he was forced, he should not have made such a foolish move. It looks like he has a card up his sleeve. But if he already had a way to deal with it and was not afraid of the Yin Monastery Master's Blood Soul Tranquility spell, then why did he have to order Taoist Yu Ming and Taoist Blood River to kill the Yin Monastery Master so many times? Gu Yuankai's eyes were filled with doubt. If there's a way to nullify the Blood Soul Calming Curse, then we just have to ignore it. With Yin Guan Lord's cultivation, if he wants to use the Blood Soul Calming Curse to kill Yin Xinghe, no matter what the outcome is, he will have to sacrifice all his life essence. Gu Jun stared at the darkness altar that was surrounded by the blood sea and didn't say a word. On the other side, Gu Peng asked, could it be a bluff to mislead us? After saying that, Gu Peng shook his head first. It was true that Yin Namlai must have felt the same way as everyone else. He was filled with doubts about the king of the underworld's move. If the king of the underworld really had a way to nullify the blood soul calming curse on Yin Xinghe, then the Taishu Temple's current monastery head Yin Namlai would have lost his life in vain. It would be equivalent to suicide. In the history of Taishu Temple, and even in the history of the Divine Land's human cultivation world, it could be said that he had died an extremely sullen death. Yin Namlai was not afraid of death, but to have a meaningless death was something that he could not accept. But if Yin Namlai hesitated because of the king of the underworld's unclear actions and watched the king of the underworld snatch the Haotian mirror, then he would become a sad joke. Giving up on the blood soul calming curse and coming to the altar with his current injuries and strength. Even if he joined forces with Gu Jun, they would not be able to break through Taoist Blood River's defense. If the other party was determined to defend, even if Yin Namlai was at his peak and joined forces with Gu Jun's longevity Lotus Throne, they would not be able to break through in a short period of time. Gu Yuankai muttered, "The Book of Life and Death is in the hands of Taoist Yuming." At this moment, he is fighting with the great Zhou dynasty's Liang Pan and the Grand Imperial Palace. Let's turn around and attack Taoist Yuming. Even if we can't kill him completely, as long as we can obtain a few pages of the Book of Life and Death and refine them into the Longevity Lotus Throne, allowing the Longevity Lotus Throne to take the final step and completely achieve good fortune. Then, we can join forces with the Yin Monastery Head and the Grand Imperial Palace to attack Taoist Blood River. Maybe we can break through the current crisis. Although it will take some time, is still a way. Gu Peng murmured, "Ninth uncle, you are right, but no one can predict how long it will take for the king of the underworld to carry out the ritual to seize the Haotian mirror. Even if he is unable to seize the mirror successfully, as long as the Haotian mirror in the mysterious sea is shaken, Taishu Temple's defense will be broken through by the dragon race in the mysterious sea, and the situation will be completely out of control." As they were speaking, Gu Jun suddenly interrupted them and said, "It's too late." Gu Yuankai and Gu Peng both raised their eyes and looked into the void far away. They saw a crack in the space above the altar and the blood sea, and a middle-aged, black-clothed Taoist came out from it. He held an ancient scroll in his hand that flashed with a mysterious and vast radiance. It was Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death. The two fell into the blood sea together. The blood sea did not cause any harm or obstruction to Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death, allowing them to fall on top of the Netherworld altar. Gu Jun said calmly, when he called back Blood River Taoist, he also called back Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death, not giving us a chance to break them one by one. After giving up the plan to kill the Lord of Yin Abbey, he will definitely gather the forces at hand and will not split them up again. Gu Yuankai, Gu Peng, and the others nodded. Then, as the void trembled, the huge imperial palace also appeared, shining with purple and gold light. Its majestic momentum shocked the heavens. Not only was Gu Jun surprised, but Blood River Taoist's eyes also flashed as he looked at the imperial palace. On top of the Netherworld altar, Taoist Yu Ming also looked at the imperial palace and gently flipped the Book of Life and Death in his hand. As the light flashed, the gray world of the dead appeared and guarded the Netherworld altar together with the Blood Sea. He had just experienced the power of the number one treasure of Human Emperor, which had returned to its peak. He was at a disadvantage when he activated the Book of Life and Death and felt that it was not easy to resist. But whether it was Gu Jun in the Sea of White Lotuses or Emperor Zhou Liangpan in the Imperial Palace, they were not relaxed at this moment. Although they had joined forces, Blood River Taoist and Taoist Yu Ming, as well as the power of the Book of Life and Death, had also gathered together. It would be difficult to break through the defense line of the king of the underworld in a short period of time. Gu Yuankai said in a low voice, "Will it still depend on the Lord of Yin Abbey?" At this moment, they, along with Emperor Zhou and Liang Pan, received Yin Namlai's voice transmission using his transcendence energy. "Thank you, fellow Taoists, for your hard work earlier. Next, I will continue with the ritual. If I succeed and ruin the Underworld Emperor's plans, he will most likely be enraged. Fellow Taoists, please be careful. If I fail, the rest will depend on my friends. This matter concerns the war between the two worlds. I hope that my friends will work together. Emperor Zhou Liangpan said, "The king of the Underworld's methods have suddenly changed. I'm afraid you, Lord of Yin Abbey, won't succeed." Silently, Yin Nanlai said, "If the king of the Underworld really has a way to dissolve my ritual, he wouldn't have needed to send people to kill me. He could have just waited for me to step onto the path of death. There must be a reason for the sudden changes in his methods and the indecisiveness in his actions. Even if I can't destroy his ritual, I'll make him pay a huge price, which will adversely affect his plans. In this way, even if I die, I'll be able to fight for a greater chance of victory for all of you." The current temple master of Taishu Temple said calmly, "I was injured by Yudu. Even if I rush over to attack the enemy's defense line with all of you, I will be of limited use and won't be of much help in the overall situation. Most importantly, time is of the essence. We can wait, but our masters in the Xianhai Sea might not. It's not good for me to take the risk, but since I have no choice, I don't lack the courage to take the risk." Far away in the void, on the vast land of the Divine Prefecture, Yin Nanlai's hands continuously formed seals. The huge rune in the void above his head had already turned completely dark red. Rays of golden light flowed on top of it, as if they were electric currents. Yin Xinghe took a deep breath and shouted in a low voice, "Go!" As he shouted, a bloodline suddenly shot out from the dark red rune. It went deep into the void, and that bloodline was incomparably ethereal. It passed through the layers of void and arrived at the location of the king of the Underworld's netherworld sacrificial altar. The gray world formed by the power of the Life and Death Book and the blood sea controlled by Taoist Blood River stretched across the horizon. Liang Pan, Grand Imperial Palace, Gujun, and the Longevity Lotus Throne couldn't break through easily. However, these majestic forces couldn't stop the ethereal dark red line. Both parties seemed to be in two different worlds, and they couldn't touch each other. Taoist Blood River and Taoist Yuming could only watch as the bloodline landed on the netherworld sacrificial altar. On the top of the sacrificial altar, beside the king of the underworld, Yin Xinghe, who had turned into an evil soul, changed his hand seals. Streams of magic power, consciousness, and thoughts were transmitted into the Xianhai Sea through the long banner in the king of the underworld's hand. His expression was indifferent. Only when the bloodline appeared and landed on his forehead did Yin Xinghe's numb gaze suddenly change, revealing a different emotion. On the other end of the bloodline, the dark red rune descended from the sky and entered Yin Nanlai's body. That bloodline connected him to his ancestor. In the past, it was his pride and his belief. Yin Xinghe's greatest influence on him wasn't because of his bloodline, but because of his ideology. But now he was going to destroy him with his own hands. He was going to send this influential figure in the history of Taishu Temple into the cycle of reincarnation. At this moment, even with Yin Nanlai's usual calm state of mind, he couldn't help but feel complicated and sorrowful. Yin Xinghe raised his eyes and looked into the void. His gaze became calm again, and no emotions could be seen. It was as if he was looking at his descendants, his inheritors, through layers of void. He calmly nodded his head. Yin Nanlai closed his eyes and suddenly clasped his hands together in a hand seal. Numerous cracks instantly appeared on his primordial spirit. From these cracks, a large amount of golden essence of the great Tao sprayed out like fresh blood. As this golden brilliance sprayed out in the void, it gradually turned into dark red blood, covering the entire world. In the next moment, the dark red blood began to burn, and the red line that connected Yin Nanlai and Yin Xinghe trembled violently. Dark red light flowed out of Yin Nanlai's body, following the bloodline and flowing towards Yin Xinghe. Yan Xinghe's body trembled violently when he felt the dark red light flowing from the bloodline. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.